Can you see what it's doing?
Yep. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the 15th annual Silk Road Conference. Because of the virus, we almost had to cancel. And you know, last year we had to cancel, but through the assistance of Chris Wager, our Director of Media Technology, we were able to put together this program today, which we hope you enjoy and benefit in some way through your business or whatever organization. First of all, we'd like to thank you. A couple of thanks first to Erin Cole, who is chairman for the event, and she will be on stage in a few minutes, and also to Paul Brabacher and Anthony Preston from Northern Illinois University College of Business. And they've been very supportive for the whole program, and we've been working on this for 6 months. Erin will thank our sponsors and our supporting organizations shortly. Why Central Asia? Today, Central Asia is becoming very important to the world's economy. There's a new era in Central Asia. In fact, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development reported a few months ago, quote, as the bridge between Asia and Europe, Central Asia is entering a new era, better connected and integrated within the wider global economy. A short time ago, some of the world organizations were working on a program to bring Afghanistan back into the Central Asian family of nations that's been away for 2 centuries. And of course, with what happened in August, that idea is gone again. The Central Asian Productivity Research Center has been serving as a source of timely information, educational projects, and basically we work on academic and economic development programs. The CAPRIC was founded in the spring of 1999 in both Turkey and Azerbaijan concurrently. Today we have representation from the Mediterranean Sea to the China Sea. And during these 22 years, we've been very successful with assisting professionals, students. We have programs throughout the year. Last year, towards the end of the year, we had a 12-week program, Business and Management, that was very successful. We had another program where we had 67 professionals involved. We had a 4-week program in the spring. We have another 4-week program this fall with possibly 2 more seminars. So we're recognized throughout the world. In fact, one program we had people watching our programs from 3 continents, Africa, Europe, and Central Asia. During our years of success, as I said, we've been providing academic and career development for hundreds of university students across the Silk Road region. We've assisted students and professionals, economic development primarily, providing resources, seminars, discussion sessions. In some cases, some of our volunteers, we're all volunteers, no one is paid, and we travel to Central Asia. We have one of our associates in Central Asia right now. He's created something like 35 new business, entrepreneurial small businesses, creating 400 new jobs in Central Asia. So these are some of our accomplishments. And we'd like to remind you that we're classified as a 501c3 nonprofit. We have no dues. We have really no membership. We're a team of volunteers, of professionals representing government, academia, and business. And anytime that you think that we could use some donations, we're welcome money all the time. Unfortunately, we need that right now. So we want to introduce Paul Brabacher, who is from Northern Illinois University. Paul and I have worked together for almost 20 years, and we've had a successful career together, I think. Also, Anthony Preston, one of our members, our team, and Anthony and Paul have been great supporting our organization from the academic side. So Paul, Professor Paul Grabacher.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate the introduction. Folks, welcome to the Silk Road Conference. Thank you. As you heard the last few minutes, we are living through extraordinary times. Appreciate the introduction. Given the circumstances that we are working under, we still have to keep pursuing our mission, which is to elevate the Silk Road countries and try our best to link them up with U.S. businesses. We've been doing this for over a decade, and I'm here to represent the academic partner cooperative venture. I'm Vice President Emeritus, Northern Illinois University. Northern Illinois University is a large state of Illinois university, fully accredited at the Carnegie level, which by the U.S. government designation is the highest recognition for an academic university. And it's my privilege and honor to be a part of this venture, not just this year, many years in the past, and many years into the future going forward. Our mission is to try our best using our resources within the diplomatic community and within academia to educate the citizens of the Silk Road countries and affiliated nations in a non-partisan way so that we can have mutually beneficial relationships both in business and in academia. It's wonderful to be a part of this experience. I'm very, very sure that each and every one of you will enjoy listening to the variety of speakers that we have. And at any time, if you have any questions, you can always send a message on the chat box. And you can also Google me and email me directly for follow-up later on. It is now my Aaron Cole, who is the president and CEO of the Clinton Regional Development Corporation. She has been instrumental in putting together this amazing conference as a program chair. And I'm going to hand off the microphone to her at this moment. Thank you, Erin, for everything you do. And we'll now wait for you to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you. Thank you, Erin, for everything you do. And we'll now wait for you to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you. Chris, is Aaron there? Is Aaron there? Put me back on stage if you want. I can fill in for a few seconds.
All right, well, thank you so much for everyone joining us today. We live in a digital world, and obviously with that, we can have technical difficulties sometimes, so we appreciate your patience with that. My name is Erin Cole. I am president and CEO of the Clinton Regional Development Corporation. It's a nonprofit economic development organization in Eastern Iowa. And I had the privilege of meeting Professor Harry Lipinski about 2.5 years ago. And he invited me to join the Central Asia Productivity Research Center, or CAPRIC, which I was thrilled to do. I have an international background, but I was looking for an outlet, in which I could use it. And so thank you very much to Professor Lipinski and to all of my colleagues through CAPRIC. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you these last couple of years. And then for Professor Lipinski to give me the honor and privilege of actually chairing this year's conference, that was a big deal for him. Professor Lipinski, this is his baby. He's been doing this for many years, has done an excellent job. We would typically do this in person in the Chicago, Illinois area. This is the largest Central Asia related or Silk Road related conference in the Midwest. And so it is an honor and a privilege for me to again chair this year's 2021 Silk Road Conference. And initially we were thinking about themes. And of course, this year, as most people know, it is the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Soviet Union, which was a major event globally and still has consequences, certainly to this day, for political reasons, for security reasons, and even for trade and business reasons. So initially we thought we would focus on that, and certainly there are some aspects to it. But because CAPRIC covers many more countries, really, if you think of the old Silk Road that covers from Turkey through the Caucasus and Central Asia and up into China, of course, there are dozens of countries involved in there. So our conference today is broader in nature. We're very proud of that. And we have some fantastic speakers lined up for you today, including a number of consuls general that are based in Chicago. And then, of course, Ambassador George Kroll, who is a long-term acquaintance of mine. We actually met around the time that CAPRIC literally was being created. So Professor Lipinski mentioned that was back in 1999. I was working at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, Russia at that time, and that is when George Kroll arrived. He wasn't an ambassador at that time. At that time, he was running the political section for the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, and so literally, ironically enough, we met about that same time. So we've had the pleasure of working together in numerous countries. He has one of the most extensive backgrounds on the former Soviet Union of anyone I know. It's why it's an honor to have him with us today. He is a recently retired U.S. ambassador. So he had a long-term career in the U.S. Department of State as a Foreign Service officer, which he joined in 1982. And in that time, he served as U.S. ambassador to Belarus, to Kazakhstan, and that was more recently, that was 2011 and 2014. And then after being U.S. ambassador, I take that back, so I apologize. So he was ambassador to Uzbekistan, where we worked together from 2011 to 2014, and then was ambassador to Kazakhstan from 2015 to 2018. He was also Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs for the U.S. Department of State and has traveled extensively around the region. So again, I mentioned the fact that we've worked together in different places since 1999 when CAPRIC was created. Again, I was living in Moscow at the time. Since that time till now, I had lived in Tomsk, Russia. I served in Almaty, Kazakhstan for 3 years. I lived in Turkmenistan in 2010, and then I myself served under Ambassador Kroll in Uzbekistan. So I've had the pleasure and opportunity to travel and live and work in the former Soviet Union myself. And so it'll be interesting to catch up with Ambassador Kroll as he gives his perspectives on what things have changed in that area over time, certainly for the better for the most part. The region as a whole is attractive to U.S. companies for doing both exporting and bilateral business in general, joint ventures and things of that nature. And of course, businesses in the Central Asia region are also interested in doing business in the United States. So we might get questions from both parties, and we're certainly open to that. So again, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce my long-term acquaintance and friend, George Kroll, who is going to share his insights with us on the former Soviet Union in particular, Central Asia, where he lived and worked for many years, and really focusing on, again, some of the things that have changed over the last 10, 15 years or so. Afghanistan, of course, being one of them. The situation in Afghanistan these days, very volatile. It borders many of the Central Asian countries. I've never seen the Central Asian governments come together as one as they have just recently. When I was serving there, at least in Uzbekistan, say 2012 to 2014, there were barriers in place between different Central Asian countries. Rail traffic was stopped at certain times, or even pedestrian traffic from one country to another was fairly difficult. Cross-border trade was difficult. It's actually something I worked on directly when I worked for USAID. And so nowadays, to see the governments come together as frequently as they are, and at such a high level, obviously with presidents and prime ministers, it's very impressive that they're actually speaking together and finding ways to work together. And a lot of that obviously is based on the situation in Afghanistan currently. So it matters to all of us. Certainly none of us knows what the future holds. But Central Asia is generally considered an up-and-coming market for U.S. businesses. And so one of the reasons why we're focusing on that area today is to introduce these markets to you. And if you have any questions regarding international trade or doing business, we're going to cover them throughout the day. And then you could always contact me as well. I'm sure we'll get the contact information out for that. But in general, again, I'm president and CEO of the Clinton Regional Development Corporation. And my email is ecole, E-C-O-L-E, @clintondevelopment.com. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Ambassador George Kroll.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Can you all hear me? Better to hear me than see me. But anyways, greetings from far off Newport, Rhode Island. So quite a distance from the way many of you are anyways. But anyways, thank you very much, Aaron and Paul and Harry and Chris, for making this all happen and for inviting me to speak today. I know we don't have an awful lot of time for me to bloviate for, I think it's about 30 minutes or so, but I thought I would make a few comments and then open it up to questions that you might have from about me, or not about me, but about the region and doing business in Central Asia and the like as well. You probably have seen a biography of me that, 30 years ago, and I was talking with Harry about this just before I went on stage here virtually, that he was in Moscow in 1991, 30 years ago, when the Soviet Union formally collapsed, which was by the end of the year. And I was at that time in, well, it had been called Leningrad, but then it had been renamed back to its previous name of St. Petersburg. And I know Aaron had served there at our consulate afterwards. But I was there when the Soviet Union collapsed, covering out of our consulate in Leningrad, covering largely the Baltic states. And then when they became independent at the end of the year, I covered the rest of the huge area of Northwest Russia. And then I went down to Kiev, Ukraine in 92, where we opened our embassy there, and then went up to Belarus, where we had opened our embassy there, and went back to Washington, where I was dealing with the former Soviet world and in the office of the Ambassador at Large for Independent States. And for those sins, I was made Director of Russian Affairs at the State Department, and where I was there till 99, where for those sins, I went to Moscow, where I was Counselor for Political Affairs to 2002, and that was the period when Yeltsin turned over to power and his presidency to Vladimir Putin. And then after concluding my assignment in Moscow, I went off as ambassador to Belarus, and then came back to the States, where I became Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Central Asian Affairs from the years 2008 to 2010, and then for those sins, ambassador to Uzbekistan, and then finally ambassador to Kazakhstan, where I retired in 2018. I currently live in Newport, Rhode Island. I teach a course on Russia and the former Soviet world at the Naval War College, and also give lectures on the subject of that particular area, and also on Central Asia, where I've spent the last 10 years of my diplomatic career. So this year, as you all know, is quite a year of anniversaries. Not only is it the 15th anniversary of this annual Silk Road Conference, which is a good thing for people to be aware of Central Asia and the Silk Road and what it all means, but also 30 years from the fall of the Soviet Union, and as we all know, 20 years from the United States engagement in Afghanistan, which has had quite a lot of influence, as Aaron quite knows, when we were serving in the region for economic and American foreign policy and economic and trade policy in this region. To make just a few points, I think it's worth for the audience to know that, Central Asia that I'm talking about are the 5 states that emerged from the Soviet Union of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, and that these states had not existed as independent states until 1990, the end of 1991. They're all celebrating their 30th anniversary of independence and declaring state sovereignty, which was the precursor to the collapse of the Soviet Union as a unitary state. But they had 75 years of being part of the Soviet Union, with all of that entailed with policies and mindsets and institutions. And in Central Asia in particular, if you will, under the rule of the Soviet Union, there was an economic transformation for this entire area, where there were huge integrated projects that the Soviet Union sort of experimented on, of changing rivers, turning this vast steppe land of Kazakhstan into wheat fields, huge irrigation projects, and in order to create a cotton industry in Uzbekistan, and also extractive industries for oil, gas, all the mineral wealth of Central Asia. So it was really part, as it has to realize, part of a large enterprise, the Soviet Union, where all of the transportation networks that were developed were all engaged in integrating this whole area into the larger Soviet Union. And which is why you look at where the roads and pipelines were built and continued to be used from the Soviet period, and why they're connected in that regard to each other, but also up north up towards Russia, what is now Russia. Now, there is also matters of the nuclear sites for testing nuclear weapons in Kazakhstan, which is a vast country, the 9th largest by territory in the world, but it was the Soviet Union's Nevada, and that had great effects. The desiccation of the Aral Sea, which it used to be one of the largest seas in the world, it's down to virtually nothing in between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, largely because of the great irrigation projects that were established in the Soviet period. So these states that emerged rather unexpectedly 30 years ago were confronted with what to do with all of this infrastructure. And also they had institutions from the Soviet period. These were Soviet socialist republics, but they were dependent on the Soviet economic planners. This was state control, state planning. They did not control their currencies and even finance flows. These were all centered in Moscow in the Union ministries. But then, under the Gorbachev period, there was an effort to try to reform the Soviet Union economically, grant more responsibility to the republics, which the republics were rather reluctant to take, but they did take it. And once they got used to having greater control, they became very much entities in their own right. And this led, in many respects, to the collapse of the Soviet Union as a unitary state, particularly when Russia, which didn't have any of these institutions as the Russian Republic, took over the Union republics back in 1991 in that historic year, which led to by the end of the year, when the Russian flag went over the Kremlin and the Soviet flag came down, because the Union could not exist anymore as it was. And the disparate republics, like the 5 Central Asian republics, were basically on their own to establish their own economic and political networks and traditions, but based on a very strong Soviet imprint. Many of these, for instance, President Karimov was a state planner, part of what was called Gosplan. All of the leaders that came out that were leaders in Central Asia all came out of the Soviet system, be it the Communist Party, be it the state apparatus. And so there's a very strong imprint of that experience in their governance, which is something you really have to understand, because that Soviet legacy is still very, very powerful in these states. There were revolutions of state power, but not from the ground up. And certainly one of the issues of stability, if you will, in these republics was the fact that they retained this strong state control, security apparatus and the like. So it didn't all fall into disintegration, although you did have a civil war in Tajikistan, but less so in the other republics because of these strong control systems, which on the one hand created a certain stability. They had to develop their own currencies, their own financial institutions on their own, because they couldn't look to Moscow, and yet they were still dependent on trade flows largely to the rest of the Soviet Union. But as independent states, these states wanted to control their economies, wanted to control their borders. Up came the establishment of customs and tariffs, and also the breaking off of a lot of these integrative aspects like the rail and the transit networks and the airline networks and everything that made it rather easy to cross all these borders of these 5 republics during the Soviet period now became barriers to trade, barriers for working together on water, because water resources were shared through this vast system, electrical energy, where it was generated in the mountains in places like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, and the trade-offs during the various seasons. This was all part of an integrated Soviet system that basically broke apart as these countries became independent. And so there's also the ideology that remained of that property didn't really belong to individuals. It belonged to the community, to the state. people expected the state to provide free education, free health care, and also all these industries that were developed in the Soviet period, and also the people that worked in them. You had people from all over the parts of the Soviet Union who lived and worked in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the like. Many of them from originally from Russia or Ukraine or whatever. That many of them all went home. And you had Kazakhstan, which had a population where ethnic Kazakhs were a minority in 1991, where most of the population were non-ethnic Kazakhs working in these vast metallurgy fields and the like, which were, by the way, built and exploited through the whole Soviet Gulag system, basically sending labor during, for instance, Stalin's period and down there and bringing people from other parts of the Soviet Union to have these massive economic projects that didn't really, it impacted the local ethnic populations, but they were not really, they were a part of it, but not the dominating part of it. But a lot of people left these areas, and a lot of these industries or factories, where were they going to sell their product? Where were they going to get their inputs from? They came from other parts of the Soviet Union. And many of these, of course, went under with great social ramifications and the like. It's good to understand that if you're doing business 30 years later in these countries. Now, to say what the perestroika, the reform movements that were thought, as for instance, Harry had said that he was teaching market economics in Moscow in 1991. But in Central Asia as well, when you have a mindset that the state is responsible, the state controls the economy, and then you're trying to have market mechanisms and, you know, a rule of law and this idea of private property and who owns it and who benefits from it in this backdrop, you can see the problems there are in this whole, if you will, transformation or attempt to transform these economies and societies from what they were to what they would like to become. Now, there was a lot of rhetoric in the period when I was in the 90s and up until the present day about economic reform and the market economy and the like, but the main issue for a lot of these governments and their leaderships was stability and not rocking the boat because of the social and economic transformations that shock therapy, which not most of these countries were not in favor of because of the implications that it could have for in society. And the bureaucracies remained very much intact, although they became very much ethnic bureaucracies of Kazakhs and Uzbeks and the like. But the mentality of the bureaucracies maintain an order and a system as it was, that is an automatic opposition to efforts to transform an economy and a society. It's just the nature of bureaucracies, frankly, including, I would say, in the United States, too. Now, in the period of independence, you do have, again, the effort of having market rhetoric, but the state really controlling it and how they controlled privatization, which was a very political issue as to who gets what. And also for the foreigners coming in because, for instance, Americans and many others saw great opportunities in Central Asia because of the riches that they could see that were there in raw materials, particularly, and why you had the deal of the century in Kazakhstan, where Chevron and ExxonMobil and others were able to cut a deal with the Kazakh government very early on in order to basically exploit those fields, which are still the largest source of income in Kazakhstan, but also for companies like Chevron and the like. And so the efforts, again, the countries themselves, they did want to have and said they would have agreements. There was the Central Asia Free Trade Association or like that they had, but it never quite worked because in reality on the ground, there was a lot of rent seeking, you know, wanting to tax and tariff, not wanting to be dependent on one another for electricity and water. And for instance, those that had water sources, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, wanting to make the Uzbeks and Kazakhs, the downstream companies, pay more. And then those countries saying, well, this is a God-given right and things of this nature. So there were great trade barriers in the region, and something that has happened to this day. But in much of the last 30 years, there were many barriers set up, but then the efforts to try to overcome them. And so you have a systemic inertia, but also this sense of being independent that kind of went against the grain of those outside advisors, including Americans and the like, who wanted to integrate Central Asia. When I would hear the Central Asians saying, look, we were integrated once before in the Soviet period, we don't need that kind of integration. We don't need another big brother, if you will. But nevertheless, we could see, and eventually they could see, the benefits of easing trade and transportation throughout the region. So what we're seeing now, and as Aaron alluded to, is you have a transformation going on in Central Asia, where the new generation, if you will, that is still very much came out of the Soviet period, is looking, and particularly you see this in Uzbekistan, which had been rather isolated under President Karimov. When I was ambassador there, it was always thought, well, Uzbekistan was always the center of Soviet Central Asia. It was the hub for all the transportation, education, the center for where the commission stood that made the agreements on electricity and water disbursement and the like. Now, under President Mirziyoyev, Uzbekistan is attempting to reassert a role as a regional sort of broker in order, and they basically have changed their relationship with their immediate neighbors, opened their borders more or less, and are opening up trade routes and the like. But it takes time to get over this for all, because the other states, do they trust the Uzbeks? Do they trust the Kazakhs, which have the biggest, as it were, economy, but largely because it's based on the oil revenues that they have. They all want to diversify their economies, but where are they going to sell it? They have the population are relatively small, and then you have the efforts of trying to connect them to the global markets, which when you're landlocked, as they are generally, where do they look? They're the traditional east-west or up north to Moscow, where all, to the Russian Federation and on to Europe and the like too. The Chinese, very active in developing this trade network of the One Belt, One Road, going east to west. And then the Americans really pushing for north-south connections or connectivity, if Erin remembers that word, and AID, where she worked in both in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and elsewhere. We're very much involved in this trying to build north-south trade and transportation, electricity efforts. The Turkmen, Afghan, Pakistan, India pipeline in this TAPI, CASA 1000, bringing electrical energy from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan down to Afghanistan and to Pakistan. These were all efforts. The United States was working through international organizations, the international finance organizations, feeling that it was something also to sort of rather politically to break the monopoly that they felt the Russians had. I mean, there were multiple pipelines trying to build across the Caspian, which still hasn't been built. And then, of course, the Chinese had their vision of, if you will, the One Belt, One Road, or their Silk Road, the American North-South Silk Road. And so lots of movements going on that have stymied lots of people over the years. But I think for those of us who lived in the region, you could understand why these things were difficult, and not to have too many illusions, but realizing this is evolutionary, and it's also dependent upon developments in other countries. And this gets us to the 20 years of Afghanistan. What does this mean as well? Because for the United States, certainly in the last, I would say, 20 years, the effort was to how to integrate Afghanistan into this broader Central Asia. And who knows what now this means for all these projects that the Americans were pushing, as well as Europeans and the international, when you have a government, or what kind of government you may have in Afghanistan now, will it be open? Because for Central Asia too, there's east-west and north-south, but there's also a partner in Iran. which has been like off limits for the Central Asians because of international sanctions, American sanctions and the like as well on doing business. But the idea of having an access to the ports on the Persian Gulf, as well as having access to the Pakistani ports, shows you not only the importance of Afghanistan for the latter, but for the former, the idea of how do you bring Iran into the picture, because for Central Asians, they are looking at all the outlets that they can for transportation of also transforming their own economies from being the suppliers of raw materials, which is what they still are in many respects, to wanting, uranium and gold and all the rare earth minerals and oil and gas, etc. What will this mean for these countries when they want to diversify their economies and make them more efficient and have markets to sell, and not just domestically, although there is a large domestic demand of things. So what we're seeing, I think, is an ongoing transformation in these now 30 years later and still there are mindsets and still there are practices that make it challenging to do business in this area of the world. But it still is an area that it has great potential. And I know as an ambassador there, I would always want to give the real picture to business people coming out there so that they go in with their eyes open, realize the challenges that they have, and realize that things aren't always what they seem or what they say. And at the end of the day, a lot of it is personal. The relationships you have with people are very powerful in this area of the world, as anywhere in the world, if you're really doing business, and how they do business. And, what are the things you should be prepared for, the risks you have to understand you're taking, and also keeping an eye on what the developments are, both domestically and externally in this region, which is something embassies do. It's our bread and butter, in addition to dealing with the governments in trying to allay tensions, deal with individual problems and things of this nature. So I think, Aaron, I'll stop at that and hope that that's given you some food for thought and open it up for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Cole. Really appreciate those insights. You had just mentioned, obviously, that the U.S. government has been heavily involved in Central Asia literally for decades, even before their independence and certainly since independence. But U.S. companies seem to be less prevalent in the region. You and I both lived and worked there. We came across U.S. businesses. Typically, they're much larger, corporations. We're obviously holding this conference for the sake of smaller U.S. businesses that might be interested in Central Asia as a market. So based on your experience there, what do you think might be the top 2 or 3 things that have changed for the better in Central Asia over the last 10 years or so that are now encouraging business, more bilateral business, and certainly business with U.S. companies? What makes it attractive for U.S. businesses?
Well, I think if you're looking particularly at Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan now, you do have a keen interest on the part of the government authorities to actively attract business to the countries. But then when the businesses come to the countries and invest in them, there's always the devil in the details, and particularly when you're in the far reaches of these countries where you have local authorities wanting to their share. And this was even in Kazakhstan too, that the oil companies that have been there for a long time have to pay up in certain respects by building playgrounds and parks and all sorts of things. And then the rule of law is still rather where judges will get their verdicts, as it were, sent to them from the center, if you will. But that means if you have your partner or somebody who has influence in the center, they can say, hey, this isn't fair or whatever. And a lot of it is, the behind the scenes working. And this was something that was true in the Soviet period too. There was the official system of what you have, writing things and forums and everything. And then there's the unofficial system of who do you need to go to fix your problem. Hey, look, my new country is Rhode Island. And, you need something that's not following a form. Who you know, who's your mother, who's your father, and who do you need to go to get something done is something that is prevalent in human society, but very much so in Central Asia. So I think what has improved is I think there is a greater impetus. I think the bureaucrats are under the pressure from the center, and this is one of the issues of having a central government, of how they can try to force things to work in favor of a particular investment or lot. But still, this is a work in progress, and you have to go in with your eyes open, but also willing to understand what are who has the power to do things in the country and the like. Who do you need to deal with? And you just can't rely on law firms and courts to get what you want done.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And this is something you may not know, and certainly for our other viewers, but CAPREC, one of the key things that we focus on is holding seminars virtually for the most part, because we could reach many more people. And we hold them on leadership, we hold them on management. They are very popular throughout the Caucasus in Central Asia. Even most recently, we had a management seminar that had Afghan participants. This is obviously before the current situation. But earlier this year, we were able to reach literally like 8 or 9 different countries that had participants come on. So we try to share this knowledge. And Ambassador Cole, you're one of certainly the smartest people I know. And I love seeing your background all the time, because one thing that I really admire about you is when you go into a new community, whatever it might be, whether it's in the US or certainly overseas, you fully embrace it for what it is. You learn the language. Ambassador Cole is fluent in Russian. When we worked together in Uzbekistan, he was fluent in Uzbek, very impressive in that regard. And being able to really adapt to and adopt, the cultural norms of where you live and work, and certainly the language is critically important. And then supporting artists. Your home looks like a gallery, so I'm very jealous about that. It looks beautiful. But for those businesses that might be watching this, that really is critically important. We'll talk a little bit about this in our next session, is when you go into any new market for business purposes, that you really need to educate yourself on the culture, on the language, on the history, as Ambassador Kroll just gave us. What things have been important in the recent past, and then how does that affect what's important now or moving forward? And certainly just the cultural mindset of the business people you might be working with, where are they coming from? So all that is critically important. So thank you so much, Ambassador Kroll, for all that, the background and the insight and the context for what we're talking about. Central Asia is a fascinating place these days. I think holds a ton of opportunity, certainly on the political side and the economic side, partnerships, security. They're going to play a critical role in whatever happens with Afghanistan moving forward. But meanwhile, I know for a fact that they're very much interested in doing more business with American companies. When I lived and worked in Kazakhstan in particular, their medical sector was just booming, and they were allowed to have private medical facilities, private dental facilities, and we're really seeking out American-made products to fill their new businesses and purchase those things. The difficulty with that a lot of times was the distributor for the American company was in Russia. And so they would try to contact the Russian distributor. And a lot of times the Russian distributors, of course, didn't want to have to necessarily do business in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. They were looking to obviously have more sales in Russia itself. So you're always going to run into some of those nuances, but really understanding the whole background and the geography and the language and the culture, all of that is critically important. So Ambassador Cole, again, on behalf of CAPREC, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciated your remarks.
Well, I could just conclude by keying off what you just said, Aaron, and that is that for resources available to businesses, embassies, contact them. They all have websites, Facebook, whatever. Many of them, there's now a new commercial officer, I believe, in Uzbekistan, which hadn't existed before. The embassies know what's going on the ground. Everyone has officers who are involved with business. Also, the chambers of commerce. I think there's a chamber of commerce in every one of these countries, American Chamber of Commerce, or it includes all the foreigners that are there. These are the businesses that are on the ground contact them, chat with them, get their experiences. Or there's also things like Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which provides risk management, risk insurance in places in Central Asia. Had been a priority for OPIC, as it's called, or I think it's under a different name now. They keep changing the names of these agencies, but it is it was called the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which is a semi-independent agency of the U.S. government. And then there are the embassies of the countries themselves that also have trade offices. I know Kazakhstan Invest is from their embassy, as well as Uzbekistan now has an active commercial center, and they're all interested. So there are governmental agencies and efforts that you could look into for both getting risk insurance, political risk insurance, and advice. And I would encourage you all to, again, do your homework, and you can, count on these people and these agencies to try to give you as clear a picture as they can. So, thanks, and thank you, Aaron. Thank you all from your group for inviting me.
Perfect, thank you. And that was an excellent segue into our next session, which is literally about how to do business in Central Asia and the Silk Road countries, and what resources and tools are available for U.S. businesses. So thank you, Ambassador Cole. Perfect segue. We're going to bring on one of our next speakers, Elena Sun. And Elena, I've also known on and off for many years. She's a huge supporter of CAPRIC. She has spoken at many previous Silk Road conferences, so we're very grateful for having her join us again. She's going to be with me for the next half hour when we talk about literally how do you take advantage of these resources that do exist. Ambassador Kroll just mentioned some of them. Certainly the embassies, U.S. embassies, as well as the embassy from the country, the Uzbek embassy in the U.S., the Kazakh embassy in the U.S., for example. And then there are also chambers of commerce. So the ambassador mentioned American Chambers of Commerce, or AmChams they're referred to. These are actually affiliated with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is at the national level. And so these affiliates overseas are open to members who are U.S. businesses in that country, but they're also open to host country businesses and other foreign-owned businesses in the country, all of whom are obviously trying to be successful in that particular market. So it's the American Chamber of Commerce in Uzbekistan, the American Chamber of Commerce in Kazakhstan, et cetera. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then Elena herself, again, is a fantastic resource, because when she introduces herself, she'll talk about the several bilateral chambers or trade associations that she represents in the U.S. Just recently, one of them is the American Uzbek Chamber of Commerce, and they just hosted a great event in Washington, D.C. Uzbekistan just celebrated its 30th anniversary of independence. And she was responsible for, putting that event together with the American Uzbek Chamber. They had a fantastic turnout, hundreds of people in Washington, D.C. to celebrate Uzbekistan's birthday. And so that was a fantastic event. And some of the other things we're going to talk about, I had previously also worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce. Within the U.S. Department of Commerce is the International Trade Administration. Ambassador Kroll just mentioned the commercial officers. They are also foreign service officers of the U.S. government, but instead of being under the U.S. Department of State, they're under the U.S. Department of Commerce. And they specifically work with U.S. businesses who want to, enter these different markets, and they can walk them through the process, and they obviously provide services and resources to U.S. businesses specifically who want to export or find partners, distributors. If they need to do due diligence in the market, they're also available to do those things. So Elena, I think, is going to be joining us in just a minute. And then we'll have her introduce herself. Okay. Okay. So meanwhile, I'm going to try to potentially share my screen if this works. And we'll start out by talking a little bit about the resources, again, that are available through the U.S. Department of Commerce, the International Trade Administration. I hope that you're seeing my screen right now. This is trade.gov, so super easy to remember. And through this website in particular, if you're a US company, you can find pretty much anything that you need or want to know regarding a foreign market. So you'll start out, you'll see the Research Center, the second from the left. The Research Center, in my opinion, is one of the best tools available. All the information on here is free. Obviously, if you're a US taxpayer as a company, the US Department of Commerce serves you and makes these tools available at no cost. If you move into a process where you want an actual service, like for example, a gold key service or an international partner search service, those are fee-based, but the amount is very reasonable. So again, I worked for the US Department of Commerce for about 7 years. 3 of those were in Washington, D.C. as the Nordic desk officer. So I covered trade policy for the 5 Nordic countries, was able to travel over there frequently, and to Brussels, Belgium, which of course is the capital for the European Union, if you will. And so whenever we had trade barriers or non-tariff barriers that US companies complained about, the US Department of Commerce through the International Trade Administration steps in and works directly with the US business to try to resolve that issue. I'll give you one example. This is going back a couple of years. I happened to be in Kazakhstan as the acting senior commercial officer. And during that time, the Kazakh government passed a law that required certain export documentation from all companies around the world who were basically exporting into Kazakhstan. This particular documentation was not available to US companies. We had already moved into a digital world for documentation, for export documentation, and the US companies were simply not able to comply with this new Kazakh law. So meanwhile, the US shipments coming into Kazakhstan were being blocked and held by Kazakh customs. So as you can imagine, you're losing money, there's confusion, there's no transparency in what's taking place. So I happened to be in country at the time and worked very closely with my colleagues back in Washington, D.C. The desk officer at the time, Danica Starks, for the U.S. Department of Commerce, she covered Central Asia. We formed a team together with Census Bureau and folks from the U.S. Department of State, certainly from the embassy, the U.S. Embassy in Kazakhstan. And that interagency group met with the government of Kazakhstan to understand what is going on. How did this non-tariff barrier, come to be? And so we found out what happened. We had multiple meetings. We had a great relationship with them. We explained our side. As it turns out, European Union companies were in the same situation as American companies. They also were not able to provide this documentation. And so therefore, over about a 6-week period, we were actually able to get the Kazakh government to change the law that they had recently passed after they understood the situation and understood that they had created unexpectedly and didn't do it on purpose, but had created this barrier for US and EU exporters. So we were able to resolve that issue relatively quickly in the big scheme of things, so about 6 to 8 weeks. So that's part of what the US government can do for you is, again, there are people on the ground at the US Embassy who can provide services. And then, of course, they have a reach to other US government agencies if they need to be involved. And they obviously have direct connections with the foreign government officials in that country. So depending on the situation, your one-stop shop is really, again, to go to the US Embassy in that country. If they have a commercial officer in particular, you're going to want to try to reach the commercial office, but even US Department of State officers can also assist you. So anyway, I'm going to go back to the website again, referring to this, because you really do want to do your research before you enter any market. You want to understand their culture. You want to understand their trade policies. Do we have a free trade agreement with that country? As it is with a lot of the Silk Road countries, we don't actually have a free trade agreement. There are other preferential treatments potentially that you could take advantage of, but not specifically a free trade agreement. You're going to want to know, for example, due diligence. If you're interested in working with a new partner, a foreign business, how do you know if they're legitimate? There are services available for a fee that you can tap into through the U.S. Department of Commerce and just have a better sense of your partner. Obviously, normally you would want to travel and meet them somewhere in person so that you can actually develop that relationship. Obviously, if you do business with people, having that personal relationship is always going to be key to your best successes, so eventually you're going to want to travel. Obviously, with the pandemic currently, that's more difficult, although not impossible. I know Uzbekistan in particular, a lot of travel is going on between the United States and Uzbekistan, both government delegations and some businesses. So it really depends on the country. But I understand Elena Sun is available to join us now, so I'm going to bring her on and let her introduce herself, and then we'll continue the conversation about tools and resources available to all businesses, really, not just U.S. businesses. Elena's organizations in particular are available to both foreign-based businesses and to U.S. businesses, and the idea really is to help them network and find opportunities amongst themselves. So a lot of good things going on, and as soon as Elena comes in, we can start that conversation. Again, with technology these days, it's great that we're able to meet, that is for sure. I know sometimes, depending on where you are, the internet connection and other things can be problematic, but we're going to make it work. So meanwhile, as we're waiting for Elena to join us, I'll talk a little bit more about the U.S. Department of Commerce services that are available, as well as trade missions, trade events. A lot of those are taking place virtually these days, but still very much beneficial. Again, I can put you in touch with the U.S. Department of Commerce folks who specifically deal with really any country if you're interested. But for Central Asia, we're talking about Central Asia, the Caucasus. Those countries, including Russia and Ukraine, are all covered under a single office at the U.S. Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. Matt Edwards is the office director, and we've been in touch recently for the sake of this conference. And so he and his staff are available for any U.S. business that wants to contact them. Again, you can do it through me. And again, my email is ecole, E-C-O-L-E, @clintondevelopment.com. And if you reach out to me directly, I'll make sure I put you in touch with the right person. So they wanted me to emphasize the fact that, again, even though they're not doing in-person trade missions as they typically would, there are some virtual events going on. So they ask that you, again, use that website that I showed you, trade.gov. There's a specific tab that mentions upcoming events, and that's updated on a regular basis. It's fresh information. So please make sure that you follow that. And a lot of the events are free. Very rarely do they charge for things like webinars for educational purposes. Certainly if it's a trade mission or something more involved like that, there is a fee involved with that also. Okay, excellent. So Elena Sun is with us now, and she's going to come on. I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself. Again, she is an expert when it comes to many countries of the former Soviet Union, but certainly Central Asia. She's been dealing with these markets for a long time, holds a senior level position as executive director of several of the bilateral chambers of commerce or trade associations. They hold events as well on a regular basis based in Washington, D.C. But again, if they're virtual events, anybody can access them at any time. She's an outstanding resource for information and, has some fantastic tools through the trade associations and the chambers that we're going to find out a little bit more about.
Well, Erin, I'm back. And I apologize for my internet connection. I think it's just Friday, and I hope that my Xfinity is not taking it seriously. So thank you so much for your patience and for allowing me to be with you today. My name is Elena Sun, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Uzbekistan Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Kyrgyzstan Business Council, U.S. Tajikistan Business Council, and U.S. Afghanistan Business Initiative. I'm very grateful to the organizers of today's event, to Paul, Harry, Erin, Chris,
I think we lost her. Irene, you want to jump in?
Okay. Yes. So hopefully we'll have Elena back on again. I understand that she was having some internet connections. As she mentioned again,
and everybody else who has worked tirelessly. All right. Okay. I think I'm back again. I apologize.
You're back again. It's okay.
Yeah. And so I don't know where you lost me, but I think that before we go into the introductions and into the detail, I'd like to mention that the American Uzbekistan Chamber of Commerce is the oldest trade association in the United States of America and Central Asia, exclusively representing American companies. And when I say American companies, I mean Fortune 100, Fortune 500, as well as a handful of small and medium-sized enterprises that are really movers and shakers of the U.S. economy. They're the people who create jobs here in the United States, but also who are very
Okay, so I'll step back in again and hopefully we'll have Elena back up and running with us. Again, she's talking about the American Uzbek Chamber of Commerce, which again just recently held a larger scale event in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Uzbekistan's independence. I know she has another large scale event pending, and it's going to be coming up shortly with participation from like senior level participation from the Uzbek government. And so we're looking very much forward to that. I have previously attended some of Elena's events in Washington. Very high scale or very high level, very prestigious, fantastic networking. You'll have folks from the embassies that are based in Washington, D.C. come to these events. In addition to those government officials, U.S. government officials from the U.S. Department of Commerce or the U.S. Department of State or Treasury or others who will also come and participate. So the networking value in and of itself is worth the price of admission. In addition to that, we also talked about the AmChams, the American Chambers of Commerce that are based in the host countries. So I have worked a lot with the American Chamber of Commerce in Kazakhstan in particular and in Uzbekistan. There are others that are located across Central Asia, but I'm going to turn it back over to Elena if she's with us again.
I am. It's really embarrassing that my internet connection has not proven to be so effective and stable these days. Although we have held so many webinars this year, almost 36 actually to this day, and we have a series of webinars coming up. But I'll just be brief. So I'll send my email to the audience, and like I said, we represent exclusively American companies, small and large. And the reason why we're so effective is because we are the pioneers. Although we are apolitical, we actually we felt that the regional cooperation was inevitable, and so in 2016 we actually created the U.S. Kyrgyzstan and U.S. Tajikistan Business Council right before the regional cooperation turned from
Okay, so until Elena comes back on, I'll continue with what I was saying about the American Chambers of Commerce, the AmChams overseas. The American Chamber of Commerce in Kazakhstan in particular is one of the largest that I've come across outside of Russia, but of Russia being a much bigger country, obviously population-wise and for the number of businesses. But the AmCham in Kazakhstan was very impressive, well connected with the foreign business community, the US business community, and certainly with the government of Kazakhstan. So they had several branches across the country. Again, we talked earlier about the size of Kazakhstan. It's really huge geographically. And so the AmCham had multiple offices. You could go into the offices and meet one-on-one with staff that were there, as well as attend events that were held throughout the entire country. Most of it was focused on policy issues, trade advocacy. Obviously, the focus is on doing business in Kazakhstan and trying to improve the overall policy environment. And the AmCham was very successful in doing that, as well as, again, the value of the networking that you would have with your peers, with other businesses, and certainly with government officials. The AmCham in Uzbekistan was also very impressive and has grown quite a bit. I've been watching them a lot on LinkedIn. They're quite active there. And they've had some real experience recently with working directly with the Uzbek government on reforms. And a lot of those reforms, of course, were economic reforms. And so the AmCham in Uzbekistan, again, mostly focused on policy issues, but also focused on peer-to-peer networking among their companies, among their members, which again would be US businesses, larger scale businesses. General Motors, if a lot of people don't know, when I lived in Uzbekistan, General Motors was a huge employer there. They owned a car manufacturing plant, and literally while I was there, had opened a brand new engine manufacturing plant that was state of the art. And they attended AmCham Uzbekistan meetings, as did other larger US, European, and local companies. So basically, I'm going to pause there and see if we can't get Elena back.
So I'm back. I'm going to turn my video off, and I think that this is going to be the sketchiest presentation about our trade association.
Go ahead, Elena. I'm so glad you're with us today, and we make a great team. So just go right ahead. Okay. Yeah, the internet's a tricky thing, So if you don't mind, I'm going to continue talking a little bit again about the AmChams overseas and how they truly are an immense resource for US businesses, for European-based businesses, and then of course for host country businesses. So if you're an Uzbek company in Uzbekistan, then by all means, contact the AmCham in Uzbekistan. They will welcome you, and they will also provide resources to you. So again, we've talked a little bit about some of the different resources that exist, certainly federal government level, US government's participation, certainly on the trade policy side, overcoming trade barriers, export assistance, particularly in the services they provide. Again, something like a Gold Key service where you're looking for a distributor, international partner search, same difference if you're looking for some kind of a partner, a distributor, salesperson. And also due diligence reports. If you're just trying to understand that a potential partner is actually a legitimate business, that's invaluable, as you can imagine. Events take place on a regular basis, even virtually. And so again, I encourage you to look at trade.gov, so trade.gov. That website in particular will give you most of the information you need, certainly from the US government's perspective. And that isn't just for Central Asia, I'll emphasize that. If you're looking to do business in China, huge resources, very, significant resources on the trade.gov website for China, for Turkey. We're going to hear from Turkey later today, Azerbaijan and the Caucasus. So I'm just going to emphasize the fact that the trade.gov website is really, again, your kind of go-to one-stop shop for all the market research information they would really need to do business almost anywhere. One other resource that I'll emphasize that's free on there and truly invaluable when you're trying to research a foreign market for doing business there are the country commercial guides. And when you go on to the trade.gov website under market research, you will find the country commercial guides. You literally put in the country name, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, China, whatever the case might be, and you will pull up an extensive report that is written by people at the US Embassy in that country, and they're updated every year. So the information is very fresh. They're typically over 100 pages, very extensive report on everything from the political situation in the country, certainly the economic situation, what's trending up and down with GDP and things like that. Certainly their policy environments, what also is taking place when it comes to non-tariff barriers, very practical issues on things like logistics. We talked about, Central Asia in particular, especially with Uzbekistan being double landlocked, it really can be difficult to move goods in and out of those areas. Of course, you have some rail, which is available. Obviously, trucking is going to be probably your best option. And then, of course, you might have some air cargo, depending on what you're shipping. But obviously, you're not dealing with cargo by sea or by, no ships. There's not a lot of water in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. You're not going to be shipping a lot of stuff by water. But nonetheless, there are logistics challenges. And of course, this report, the Country Commercial Guide, will walk you through the options that are available. Things like customs brokers is still relatively new in this part of the world. In the United States, we rely heavily on customs brokers and freight forwarders to provide educational information and tariff information. And those are just now really starting to take off on a large scale in places like Central Asia and the Caucasus. They do exist, but less so than in the US. But I'm going to pause there again and turn this over to Elena.
Thank you so much, Erin. So I think that let me start from the beginning because I really want the audience to know what we are. And again, I represent here 4 business groups, 4 trade associations. And the reason why I'm here is because this is not the first time that I'm speaking before the audience. And I really appreciate Harry's and Paul's and Erin's efforts to bring awareness of Central Asia here in the United States. I think we really need to be more vocal and more specific about our not only foreign policy in Central Asia, but about our business endeavors and business efforts and the business advocacy that American companies have been engaged in Central Asia since 1993. So I'll start with the American Uzbekistan Chamber of Commerce. We were the first and the exclusively the only trade association back in 1993 that established trade relations and trade association with the Republic of Uzbekistan. It was a small group of companies. When I joined in 2010, we only had 10. Now we're the 3rd largest among the Central and Eastern Europe trade associations and among the former Soviet Union countries. So the obvious 2 largest are the 2 countries that are massive in population, that is Russia and Ukraine. And so we, the American Uzbekistan Chamber of Commerce, is the 3rd largest trade association operating the former Soviet Union. Again, we represent Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, as well as a group of small, medium-sized enterprises. And the reason for doing that is because, as I listed, and I don't know if you had a chance to hear this, but we are the pioneers, we are the multipliers, we are the advocates, we are the innovators and the locomotives and the doers, as well as the foundation of the bilateral and multilateral relations between the US and Central Asia. So what we basically do is we try to focus on very apolitical issues, and that is trade. Trade and investment benefit everyone. They benefit the people here in the United States, they benefit the people in Central Asia. And what we always try to do is we try to focus on the opportunities that can enrich our companies and our companies' relations with the people of Central Asia, and to allow the people of Central Asia to have better access to infrastructure, to healthcare, to education, to social aspects. And I think these are the benefits that are inevitably can only be provided by the American companies. And again, here, as a representative of American companies, and with all due respect to our competitors in Europe and Asia, I'm here to say that American companies have much more to offer to the people of Central Asia. And I would like to start, I think, with the fact that why we call ourselves as pioneers is because not only that we were the first ones to create the trade association with Central Asia, but also in 2016, before the regional cooperation was a real thing, we decided to form the trade associations with Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. And so I happen to be the executive director and the person who worked with the governments of Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and our companies here on creating the business councils where ACO, Baker McKenzie, and General Electric became the founding members. And since then, we became the pioneers in bringing the first trade delegation. Don't confuse it with a trade mission. These are 2 different things. Trade delegation of American companies to Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. The reason why I differentiate is because trade delegation, unlike trade mission, was initiated by the private sector. So trade missions are initiated by the Department of Commerce in cooperation with their colleagues in the region. But this trade delegation in 2017 was groundbreaking because, and it was an icebreaker as well, because apparently and evidently nobody ever thought of bringing a group of large American companies to these smaller countries of Central Asia. And so we were the first ones who not only brought them, but we also tried to facilitate discussions with Central Asian governments, respectively Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, on opportunities in renewable energy, in healthcare, in agriculture, in education, legal services. and most importantly, anti-corruption and transparency. I think that this is the role that we play, that whenever you talk about Central Asia, people always think about the challenges. But we are here to say that no region, no country of the world is free from these challenges. If you look at the map, you always see that the countries are debating and they have legal issues either on a bilateral basis or through multilateral organizations such as WTO and many others, where they discuss issues that are pertinent to their business. And so what we do is we try to facilitate these discussions on a bilateral basis between the companies and the governments. And so we facilitate discussions that are constructive, that are positive in nature, because at the end of the day, again, trade benefits everyone, and we want companies and we want Central Asian populace to benefit from the business relations with the United States of America. The reason I think that there is sometimes a misconception among Central Asian policymakers maybe and regular folks that American companies are in Central Asia just because of the profits, which is not rightly so, because we are not here just for the profit. If we were for the profit, we wouldn't be there for more than 30 years. We are there for mutually beneficial opportunities. We want to make sure that there is equal partnership, an adequate partnership, and that there is a dialogue, a constructive dialogue that benefits everyone involved. And so when we come to the region, be it Central Asia or anywhere else, we always try to identify what are the mutual interests, what are the goals that we as a business can help achieve. And I think that when we talk about the business, we as a trade association represent a large group of companies that are sometimes in the competing areas. So let's say we represent a group of companies that are in the agricultural sector, and some people become very cautious because they grow cautious because of the obvious competition. And so our response to that is that American companies like competition. They like open competition. They like competition which is open and transparent. They like to know who the competitors are so that they can provide the best quality, the best offer to the people of Central Asia. And I think that as long as the competition is open and transparent, that is of great benefit to everybody involved. We are also innovators, and when I say innovators, I'm talking about the need for the needs of Central Asia to restore and to revive and to advance their infrastructure, their healthcare, their education. And again, I think that when it comes to freedom of innovation, the US is the leader and the pioneer. You look at Facebook, you look at iPhone, you look at fashion, you look at shows. This is where the US leads, and this is where we continue to remain very strong. And this is what we would like to convey to the people of Central Asia, that we are the innovators, and we are not only innovating at home, but we are also ready to innovate overseas, and especially in the fastest growing area of Asia, which is Central Asia. I would also like to emphasize that we are the multipliers. There are different trade associations in the United States and also in Central Asia. They are industry-based. Some of them are industry-based. Some of them are geography-based. Some of them are locally based, depending on the country that you're talking about. We happen to be the US-based trade association or association of business groups that cover Central Asia. The reason why why we chose the US as our headquarters and not be based in Central Asia is because we consider ourselves as frontliners. We are the frontliners because we meet with every company that is interested in doing business in Central Asia. So it is one thing when you hear from Central Asian governments and from the government of the US about opportunities of doing business, but then it is totally different when you speak to business practitioners, to businesses who do business in Central Asia, who know how to overcome challenges and who understand what the challenges are. So we call ourselves multipliers because if there is an issue of interest or concern, we would like to unite, we would like to combine our efforts and be able to communicate them again in a very constructive and positive manner to the policymakers and to the decision makers on both sides of the Atlantic. We're also doers and movers and shakers. And I think that my favorite speech is by Theodore Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena. It's not the critic who counts, right? But it's the man who is in the arena. And in our case, it's our American companies that are, despite of the criticism that we hear, and sometimes this criticism doesn't matter. I mean, it can be very apolitical. Sometimes it's about issues. Sometimes it's about the way we're engaged or the sectors that we cover. But let's remember that it's not the critical counts. What counts is the company that is there, that is in the region, that is eager to do business, that is eager to identify opportunities, that is eager to find solutions. And I think that's the strength of our companies. Our companies are not discouraged by the fact that the US is thousands of miles away from Central Asia. Our companies are not discouraged by the fact that there is a huge ocean separating our country from the region. We're also not discouraged that that Central Asia is located in a very dynamic, I think, in a very dynamic region with with high powers and very influential business partners. So again, what we do is that we do our business on a day-to-day basis. We recruit staff overseas in Central Asia. But most importantly, we also recruit staff here in the United States. So I think that the message to the American populace is on the importance of developing foreign trade, because foreign trade, again, benefits those of us who live in Washington, D.C., in Wyoming, in Dakota, North Dakota, South Dakota, or anywhere else. We produce goods and we export them to Central Asia. And some of these goods, machinery, and equipment is produced here in the United States. So we want to make sure that there is a strong understanding of the benefits. And again, this is where the advocacy umbrella comes in. We want to make sure that the populace understands of the need to develop frontier markets, emerging markets such as Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and so many others, that our populace should not be discouraged by the fact that there are events that fluctuate sometimes and affect our relations, be it political or commercial. And I think that all we have to focus on is the benefits, the economic benefits. At the end of the day, I think when people have, and again, that's very prosaic, right? But when you have a food on the table, when you have a roof above your head, when you have the best education, then you can think about other things. So we're here to provide all the basic needs that any human being need. We provide the bread, we provide the roof, we provide the opportunity for the best healthcare, we provide the opportunity for the best education, so that the people here in the United States and America can then enjoy and pursue their opportunities for personal health, for personal happiness. And I think that's the main thing that's the main mission of our trade associations, is to provide the people with opportunities to pursue personal happiness. And personal happiness most of the time rests on economic foundation, and that's the economic foundation that we as a business provide. I think that when we talk about the benefits of being a member of our trade association, one shouldn't forget, and I think that might be, I have to wrap it up. So I'll try to be very brief, but we do webinars. And again, we're not new to Zoom. It's very unfortunate that today's internet connection was not stable, but I can assure you that our webinars are very informative. We try to focus not only on American companies, but we also try to focus on Central Asian audience, because we want to make sure that they understand why American companies are the best business partners, why the United States is the best business partner for Central Asia, and why business with the United States is very important for the better development of Central Asia. So our webinars are on financial issues. They are on renewable energy. I mean, they are on very critical issues on financing. They are also on competition. They are on digitization. They are on information technology, on healthcare, on public-private partnerships. And so later on, I'll post the email, which is info@aucconline.com, so that you can sign up for our newsletter and be part of our discussions and be part of webinars. And we're always looking, by the way, for great speakers. And if you feel that you have a certain degree and certain expertise that you would like to offer, then we'll be more than happy to work with you and share your views and your unique experience with a broader audience. We do have a large. Yes, go ahead.
If I can interrupt for just a second, because we do have a couple of interesting questions here that I want to make sure we have a chance to get to while you're still on here speaking about expertise. So we have, I'm going to start with the first one that I have on here, and it has to do with Afghanistan. And the question has to do with what can be done to ease the sanctions on Afghanistan. And of course, the Fed in the United States has apparently frozen Afghan assets. This is counterproductive to improving conditions for trade and development in Afghanistan. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, of course, I do have those, but I think sometimes I would like to offer them in a more private and an offline format because situation in Afghanistan is developing very rapidly. I mean, it's a pretty raw kind of like situation where one needs to assess also kind of like all the nuances and the intricacies, right? I agree that we need to think about the people of Afghanistan. So it's a broader majority that is pretty vulnerable right now. But again, I will be happy to discuss this as a business. We, of course, are concerned with what's happening, and Afghanistan offers a lot to the world, and we just hope for peace and stability in this very important market, not only to Central Asia but also to the rest of the world, given the resources and the skills that the Afghan people possess. So again, I'll be happy to meet offline to discuss what can be done. Just again, because it's a rapidly kind of like developing situation.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. The other question that we have right now, I think we're probably going to answer a little bit later in the presentation, which is the question has to do with coordinating more with China's Belt and Road projects in the region. And of course, that is of great importance to us. We're going to have the Consul General of China based in Chicago as a speaker later in the program. So I think that would be a fantastic time, certainly, to raise that question again, critically important. So anyway, we want to thank everyone for joining us for this particular session. Covered a lot of information, a lot of tools and resources that can be used to educate yourself on a new market as you plan to enter. Or if you're already in the market now, there's still opportunities for networking, for advocacy, for other things of that nature. So Elena, thank you so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure to see you. Really appreciate your time. I'm going to turn this back over to Paul, who's going to introduce our next speaker. And I thank you again for joining us. We have some great speakers left for the rest of this morning. Again, we're going to have the Consul General from Turkey, the Consul General from China, and I believe the Consul General from Pakistan will be joining us this morning, as well as David Headley from the Illinois Soybean Association, does a lot of work overseas. We have some great speakers coming up, so we look forward to having you stay with us. Or, of course, if you want to come in and out as the speakers come on, you should have the agenda available to you, and you can rejoin whenever it's most convenient for you. But Elena, I'll be catching up with you soon, and good luck with your upcoming events in DC with the Uzbeks.
Sure, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing many of you at our annual business forum. And again, info@aucconline.com, and I'll leave the email address so that you can sign up. But thank you so much.
Okay, great. So I'm going to turn this over to Paul, and he's going to introduce our next speaker. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, am I on stage yet?
Yes, Paul, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elena, for your very insightful, strong speech. And too bad the technology did not cooperate, but I can assure you that the audience and all of us around you, we appreciated your firsthand experiences and sharing. Once again, I'm Paul Prabhakar from Northern Illinois University, and we've been co-hosting this conference for several years, first time online. It is now my privilege to bring on stage one of the closest diplomatic friends for Northern Illinois University, and that's the Turkish Consulate General from the city of Chicago. He's relatively new to the city of Chicago, but it's my pleasure to welcome Consul General Engin Turesan, both to Chicago and to our long-standing relationship between Northern Illinois University and your consulate. You have your full 30-minute time, Consul General, so please go ahead and address the audience and share your views. I'll come back and thank you at the end of the speech. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Prabhakar. As you said, I'm relatively new, but the term has, I think, I can confidently say that I'm not that new anymore, although it still feels like it. 14th of September, a few days ago, was my full year to the date here in Chicago. But of course, with the effects of the pandemic and everything else, as now we're experiencing today, that we have changed the venue to a virtual one of this event. It's been slow going, and with meetings with the over the internet and Zoom and all the online advantages that technology provides to us. Still, of course, human-to-human contact and relations are a very important part of my job, and I would like to hopefully be in the campus or be in physical venues very soon. And of course, on the other hand, I'm very much looking forward to enjoy to the full what the city offers, which is one of the perks of our job, traveling around the world. But enough of that. I have prepared a short presentation for you about business opportunities in Turkey. We do have Invest in Turkey representative in Washington, which he's an agent of the Turkish presidency that promotes Turkish businesses and business in Turkey in the US. And we often, when we visit different states and cities, we're often doing that together. I wanted him to be here today, but as the UN General Assembly and the new Turkish house that's been built across from the United Nations headquarters is being opened, he is there this weekend, very busy. But I'm, of course, happy to try to delve in a little bit into business opportunities in Turkey. But before I move on, just a little technical question. Now, I don't see anything on my screen, and I want to make sure that I'm still connected. Good. Okay. Great. So, first of all, please allow me to extend my appreciation to Mr. Lipinski, you, and the Central Asia Productivity and Research Center for organizing this meeting. We're all going through a challenging process. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected everything from economic activity to social life, from international business to our daily habits. Without any exceptions, all countries have been affected by this global pandemic. While many of us, either as individuals or as institutions, are still struggling to adapt to the new conditions, our government have been busy with taking necessary measures to contain the virus and to mitigate its impact on our economies. Turkey's fight against the pandemic has introduced targeted measures mainly for the most vulnerable group of people. The government has also been very careful to not hamper economic activities across the country. On the other hand, Turkey was not caught unprepared. As it happens, we have been massively investing in the healthcare infrastructure by building modern city hospitals through public-private partnerships. These investments have not only improved the service standards of the public healthcare system, but also have been instrumental in containing the pandemic and reduced its negative impact on the economy. Of course, we're speaking in relative terms, and under normal circumstances, we all have suffered. Distinguished participants, thanks to timely and targeted measures, Turkey has been one of the least affected economies in terms of economic slowdown and overall fiscal burdens. As such, Turkish economy was one of only 2 economies among the G20 that avoided economic contraction and registered overall positive growth in 2020. The growth and recovery momentum have continued into 2021 as well. According to the most recent data, Turkish economy expanded by 7.2% in the first quarter of 2021, followed by 22% in the second quarter. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly disrupted international trade and investments. The disruption caused by the pandemic has revealed the weak links in global supply chains. Therefore, multinational companies have been reconsidering their geographic and sectoral activities to diversify their supply networks. For multinational companies, it is now more important to be close to the source and destination markets. While a limited reshoring is also an option for companies, nearshoring and relocations are the most viable options for many companies. According to experts' assessments, Turkey is well positioned to take advantage of the shift in the global supply chain networks. Turkey's strong position as an attractive destination for relocation has also been identified in a recent analysis by the credit rating agency Fitch. Considering Turkey's comparative advantages in manufacturing, skilled labor force, strategic location, free trade agreements, logistics infrastructure, and many other capabilities, Turkey is in an ideal position for multinational companies looking for diversification of their supply chains. Turkey has a diverse and strong manufacturing base, which has indeed moved up the value chain over the past decades. Transitioning from limited manufacturing to advanced manufacturing, according to a recent report by the World Bank. The Turkish government also supports manufacturing, especially high value-added manufacturing, through customized incentives and policies. Logistics infrastructure has been key to Turkey's integration with the global economy through international trade. Therefore, Turkey has massively invested in transport infrastructure over the past decade, establishing domestic and international transport links, facilitating cross-border trade and economic activities. Turkey's geostrategic location has also been a unique opportunity for international companies to relocate their manufacturing and management activities. As companies are looking for proximity to the source and destination markets, Turkey offers them attractive advantages: easy and efficient access to multiple markets around Turkey. Today, many multinational companies are already using Turkey as a manufacturing, exports, R&D region. Imperative to Turkey's integration with the global economy is its productive labor qualified engineers and competent teachers with extensive international experience. Furthermore, Turkey also offers a cost-competitive labor force with one of the most competitive. Moreover, Turkey has established an extensive union with the European trade agreements with more than 25 countries. As such, companies located in Turkey are able to access overall 1 billion potential customers without any customs restrictions or tariffs. Last but not least, Turkey has been in its investment climate over the years with sweeping reforms in many areas. Of the most open country, for example, Turkey's ranking on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index over the past 4 years have improved from 69th to 33rd place among 190 economies. Before ending my speech, I would like to highlight that Turkey is a growing G20 economy, which links East with West uniquely. Our diversified economy, entrepreneurial business culture, as well as young and tech-savvy population offer lucrative opportunities cases. We are inviting investors to benefit from these opportunities in a variety of sectors, such as automotive, energy, especially renewable energy, which I would like to open a parenthesis here that renewable energy now constitutes 52% of the installed energy potential of Turkey. Chemicals, pharmaceuticals, information and communication technologies, and infrastructure, especially in transport infrastructure, ports, railways, roads, and airports. Thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Consul General, for your very insightful presentation. You've educated our audience, many of whom are business people and academic faculty and students. Certainly appreciate your taking the time out of your busy schedule and come and share a few minutes with us. I'm hoping this will be one more piece to the relationship between Northern Illinois University and your consulate in Chicago. In a few days, I will send you a follow-up email with an invitation to come and visit the campus and come and visit the classes. And you can certainly share a similar message to different audiences.
I got disconnected and the connection is very patchy, so I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, I was thanking you on behalf of the audience and the university in sharing your views and sharing very insightful current information. And I was also saying that a few days from now, I will send you a follow-up email inviting you to the campus and more sharing, building partnership between your Consul General office and my university, Northern Illinois University. We've had a rich, long heritage over the last 10 years. So Consul General, we have a question for you if you have a few minutes from the audience. The question is from one of our faculty experts in the association. And his question is, what is the rate of inflation and unemployment in Turkey from 2017 to 2020? The rate of inflation and unemployment in Turkey from 2017 to 2020. If you can give an approximate idea of that, that would be great.
Well, I would not be able to give how do you say, the rates from 2017 to 2020, but in 2020, as far as I can remember, the unemployment rate would be around 7%, and the inflation would be around 10%. That is, of course, with the pandemic in full swing. And for the 2021 first quarter number, which I've given you the growth rate, I really do not have the number for inflation in memory.
Sure. Thank you, Consul General. We are living through extraordinary times, and certainly many of these numbers for every country is skewed in the last year and a half, 2 years. And I appreciate you being willing to come here and share the strategic role of Turkey in world affairs. And as I said earlier, our friendship with the Turkish Consul General in Chicago has been for more than a decade, and I hope to continue that relationship with you on a personal level. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it very much. I think you're muted, Consul General. Chris, can you unmute him? Okay, Consul General.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Well, are there any more questions, or should I?
No, thank you. We are done for this session. Appreciate it very much. Thank you again. Okay, moving on. The next speaker in this conference is a person who's very well known, both to me individually as a member of Northern Illinois University, and also very familiar with the United States world affairs. He served for a few years with the Azerbaijan embassy in Washington, D.C., and his name is Natik Bakishov, very professionally trained in multiple countries. Natik has worked for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Baku, in Azerbaijan, and it is my privilege to invite Natik to the stage in just a minute. Before I do that, I have to make sure that each one of you in the audience understands the challenges of technology and the last minute switch from in-person to virtual, and that those challenges have also affected our speakers. So we've had to make some last minute changes to the lineup of speakers. However, each one of the speakers is very powerful, very useful information to share and opinions. So let me now welcome Natik Bakishov from Azerbaijan, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His current role is he is the Executive Director of the United States Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce based in Washington, D.C. And he's moved from his earlier diplomatic role officially for the country of Azerbaijan now to head the kind of the partnership role between the U.S. and Azerbaijan. This is particularly important for American businesses who wish to do business in Azerbaijan, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about the hands-on nitty-gritty details of how do you actually do business in that country. And also Natik will introduce the strategic role of the Azeris in world affairs. Natik, so nice to see you again after a couple of years now. Welcome on stage, and the stage is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Probacher. You know, it's always great to see you again. And using this opportunity, first of all, I want to thank you personally, Professor Lipinski, Aaron and Chris, for this incredible work. So thank you for gathering all of us today. It's very important and very, very timely to speak again about Central Asia, Caucasus, and Eastern European affairs. Before starting switching to my presentation, I want to give a couple information about our organization. For those who are not familiar with USAC, United States Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce. As it was already mentioned, I am Executive Director for the Chamber of Commerce. Our Chamber of Commerce was established in 1995 with the aim and goal to facilitate trade and business relationships between Azerbaijan and the United States. So today we're representing around 50 US and Azerbaijani businesses altogether. So half from Azerbaijan, half from the United States. And our primary members are those who are interested in doing business in either marketplaces. So as Chamber of Commerce, we have several tools to facilitate all these connections, trade relationships. First of all, we do it through trade missions, annual trade missions, which partly are certified by the United States Department of Commerce, and other private trade missions that we do ourselves. So in 2019, USAC, along with our partner organization, USAID Azerbaijan, we brought 2 trade missions, agricultural trade missions from Azerbaijan to the United States, to the state of Illinois and the state of Oklahoma. So all these 2 trade missions together yielded around $1.2 million in trade between Azerbaijan and the United States. So at the USAC, we understand that trade associations like ours have very unique position and role in facilitating trade. So basically, we are bringing new ideas. We're trying to be part of the business, not only just a facilitator. We are trying to, as I already mentioned, bring new ideas to both sides to present them business opportunities in both marketplaces. So this is very short about our organization. But here today, I'm planning to speak about business opportunities in Azerbaijan. So we specific focus on 2 sectors in economy. So as you know, Azerbaijan is a Central Eurasian country on the shores of Caspian Sea. Our geographic location makes Azerbaijan a natural hub between Europe and Asia. The country's favorable geographic location, doubled with the state-of-the-art transportation and logistic infrastructure, open up alternative trade routes and opportunities for businesses trading between China and Europe. Today, Azerbaijan operates 10 international airports, the largest sea trade port on the Caspian shores, over 25,000 kilometers of hard surface roads, and over 2,900 kilometers of railroads. These numbers do not include the restored portions of transportation network in the recently liberated territories. So since regaining its independence in the early 90s, Azerbaijan has been a favorable destination for foreign and international investors and businesses. In 1994, by signing the contract of a century, Azerbaijan unlocked the hydrocarbon resources of the Caspian Basin for international businesses, which made Azerbaijan a top post-Soviet country hosting the largest international investments. So to date, Azerbaijan and its international partners have completed strategic projects like Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan crude oil pipeline and Southern Gas Corridor, which eventually changed the energy map of Europe. So Azerbaijan is also striving to create favorable business and investment climate in the country through diversification of economic and tax reforms, and business incentives for businesses, local and foreign business in the country. So results are duly reflected in international reports, such as the World Bank's Doing Business report. So in Doing Business 2020 report, Azerbaijan ranks 28th among 191 countries. So 1 year earlier, the Doing Business report ranked Azerbaijan as one of the 10 most reformist countries in the world. So gradual changes are also recorded in the Global Competitiveness Index of the World Economic Forum, so which ranked Azerbaijan 58th among 141 countries in 2019. Now, I want to focus to the sectors of economy that I mentioned before at the beginning of my speech, so which I believe representing plenty of opportunities for business, for local and international business, in particular for American businesses. So the first sector is agriculture. So in Azerbaijan, agriculture is one of the priority areas in the non-oil sector and is the largest employer in the country. This sector employs over 40% of Azerbaijan's population. After collapse of the Soviet system, Azerbaijan's agriculture sector passed through significant reforms and transformed to a private sector dominated, led, and competitive system. Agricultural and land reforms undertaken in the 90s and the early 2000s immediately yielded its results. So the average annual growth rate in agriculture between the years of 2000 and 2019 was recorded 8.7%. For the same period, the volume of export of agriculture products increased by 10.9 times. According to the World Bank, today Azerbaijan is almost twice ahead of the world average in the medium and long-term growth rates in agriculture. During 2015-2019, the volume of investment in agriculture increased over 2 times. For the same period, private sector investment in agriculture tripled. In 2018, within a very short period of time, the share of private investments in agriculture exceeded the share of public sector. So public investments are now mainly directed to the infrastructure development, including but not limited to the irrigation and melioration systems, which are the government's responsibility to provide for the private sector. The government also provides substantial business incentives to agriculture producers and processors. They are exempted from land and property taxes and 50% of income tax, VAT on imports of machinery, technological equipment for the period of seven years. These incentives not only instigated more local private investments, but also attracted foreign investors to the country. In 2015-2020, the number of registered foreign capital enterprises in the agriculture sector in Azerbaijan increased by 3.8 times. So I know there are lots of questions about the investment protection in the country, and for those who are interested in these issues, I have very short information. So it is under Azerbaijani legislation, foreign investors are fully protected and may not be subject to nationalization unless specific circumstances require it. Foreign investors in Azerbaijan can engage in any business activities, including agriculture activities, that are not prohibited under any other Azerbaijani legislation. So foreign investment activities taking place within the territory of the Republic of Azerbaijan are mainly regulated by the law on protection of foreign investment as of January 15, 1992, and the law on investment activity as of January 13th, 1995. So for agriculture part, I want to stop here and switch to the second sector of the economy that we believe represents several and plenty of opportunities for American businesses. It is alternative energy. So, you know, Azerbaijan, those people who are familiar with Azerbaijan, with our geography, they know that Azerbaijan is the birthplace and cradle of the oil industry, oil and gas industry in the world. So, but now Azerbaijan is developing its alternative energy because Azerbaijan is a country with a high potential for renewable energy. The government is promoting the efficient use of energy and the creation of new sustainable energy sources. The potential for economically viable and technically usable renewable energy sources are estimated as 26,940 megawatts, including 3,000 megawatts for wind energy, 23,000 megawatts for solar energy, 380 megawatts for biomass, and 520 megawatts for small hydropower energy. So the government has set an ambitious goal to increase the share of renewable energy in total installed power generation capacity to 30% by 2030. Of course, it sounds very ambitious, but it's doable here with the help of local investors and foreign investors, foreign private sector representatives. So this means around, these numbers means around 1,500 megawatts of additional renewable energy projects. So the government is aiming to achieve these goals through private investments and public-private partnerships. Renewable energy in Azerbaijan is increasingly attracting foreign companies to the country. A number of companies have already submitted proposals regarding the realization of solar and wind energy projects in Azerbaijan. So we believe American companies will be very active in doing so, in submitting their proposals talking to Ministry of Energy and other stakeholders in the country to better to get better educated, to be better educated about the current business opportunities in the alternative energy sector. So, as the Chamber of Commerce, we stay ready to help those companies who are interested in entering alternative energy market in Azerbaijan. So, in 2020, Azerbaijan liberated territories previously held under military occupation of Armenia. So, this opened up new opportunities for further expansion of alternative energy sources and incorporating vast territories with high wind, solar, and hydro energy potential to Azerbaijan's energy grid. So around 25% of Azerbaijan's local water resources are formed in these territories, which provides excellent opportunities for hydropower generation. For the solar energy, the potential is estimated around 4,000 megawatts. Minister of Energy, along with local and international partners, are developing green energy zone concept for the region, for the recent liberated territories. So it will be a very unique project in Azerbaijan and entire region. So we are confident that this will be another favorable destination for foreign investors, including American investors, in the nearest future. So I want to stop here and thank again for all those who are listening to us right now, and for organizers for putting together this incredible webinar. And as U.S. Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce, we are ready to help with consultancy, with helping American Azerbaijani businesses to enter both markets. So it's late here where I'm joining. I'm joining you from Baku. It's 7:14 p.m. in Baku, and here I want to say goodbye. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to take it before I leave. Thank you.
Natick, there is a question from the audience.
Sure.
If an American business is interested, what initial resources are there for them to form customer partnerships or even to prospect for customers in Azerbaijan?
Of course, thank you for a question. Of course, your initial gateway to Azerbaijan from America is U.S. Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce. So by contacting us or by visiting our webpage, you can get plenty of information. It's www.usacc.org. It is usacc.org. Or you can just email us. I'll provide our email address after the briefing. So just email us. We'd be very much happy to assist you with however we can. So we can put you in touch with direct business partners, with government stakeholders, and we can inform you about business opportunities and perspectives in Azerbaijan marketplace.
Thank you, Executive Director Natick, very, very much. Truly appreciate your presence. In spite of the time difference, for making yourself available. And
Sure.
I must get a plug in here. The city that you're sitting in, Baku, is probably one of the most favored tourist destinations in the world, in case people haven't visited that city. So thank you again for your presence.
Yeah.
I hope we will get to cross paths in person very soon in a few months. Wish you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on, the next item on the agenda, Chris, is Harry ready to show the speech? While we are getting the next speaker lined up, let me update the agendas items that are coming up now in the next hour or so. We have the Turkish Consul General who gave a speech a few minutes ago. Similarly, we have the Consul General from China who will be addressing us in a little while. In fact, probably in a few minutes, in 15, 20 minutes or so. And after that, we have the Consul General's office from Pakistan, who will also be addressing the audience. So I encourage those of you who are watching this live to submit any questions you may have, send a note or send a chat message, and I will have the speakers respond to that in spite of the technical issues. So I am going to invite the chairman of the Central Asian Pacific Research Center, Harry Lipinski, now to come in and speak a little bit about this research center before we bring the Chinese Consul General in. So Chris, if you will bring Harry on stage, he can talk a little bit about the organization. And while Harry is getting on, yeah. Okay. 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 You can call Ron Melka and have him get Harry in. The Central Asian Pacific Research Center, CAPRC.org, has been in existence now for close to 2 decades. And those of you who are interested in being a part of this organization, it's a not-for-profit organization, non-political, no membership. It's purely based on volunteers who have an interest in that region of the world, the Central Asian Pacific countries, and their economic welfare. If you wish to volunteer your time or share your views, contact me, and I will make sure that that you get plugged into the organization. We meet once a quarter. We organize relationships and partnerships with Central Asia Pacific countries. And once that's done, then you can certainly continue to advise us and bring your expertise in if that is your personal interest. I see that the Consul General of China is now available. Sir, are you ready now to go on stage?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much.
Okay.
Actually, Consul General Zhao Jian is not on stage yet, but I am the commercial counselor, Ying Zhi Hu, and I'm actually to speak after Consul General Zhao, but right now I think I'm available.
Okay.
So maybe I can start with mine first before Consul General Zhao takes over.
Thank you very much. Let me officially say a few words. Thank you to the Consul General and to the commercial officer, that's you, so very much for participating in this conference. My university, Northern Illinois University, has a long-standing relationship with the consulate in Chicago. For the last 20 years, we've known every Consul General that's been there, and I will be happy to make a visit and officially welcome your Consul General to my campus to visit with my professors and my students whenever convenient. But meanwhile, thank you for attending this conference. We look forward to your thoughts and also the Consul General's opinions and information that he wishes to share. So, and we will stick to the timeline roughly. So whenever you can say a few words and then introduce the Consul General. He can have roughly 30 minutes or so, but certainly he can take the time he needs to share his opinion. So once again, thank you to the People's Republic of China and welcome to this conference.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us to this conference. And personally, it's a great pleasure for me to join. As Consul General Zhao Jian, he will make a very comprehensive presentation on the Belt and Road Initiative. I am, as the commercial counselor, what I'm going to do is to supplement or maybe to present some stories or specific cases. I hope these stories will be helpful in people's understanding that the initiative is far more than the mega infrastructure projects, with Chinese investment. It is rather an open and inclusive platform of extensive consultation and joint contribution to deliver sustained economic, social, cultural, and environmental benefits for the common development and shared future of all the peoples in the world. The first story I'm going to present is we call a water filter in Hilar, Iraq. I actually try to present some pictures to share my screen. I don't know how is it possible that I share my screen, or we have some difficulty here. But anyway, technically, I think I have a problem as to how to share this here with my, I think it was my app. But anyway, the story is about, the city of Hilar in Iraq. This has a population of about 450,000, and it's used to suffer from a very poor sewage system, as they had been only one sewage treatment facility with very limited capacity there. A Chinese company was contracted by the Iraqi government to build a sewage treatment plant for the local community, and the plant was completed in 2017 with a processing capacity of more than 100,000 tons of sewage per day. The plant will be able to handle sewage generated by the whole city in the coming 25 years. And the company also designed a network of 400 kilometers of pipelines and dozens of sewage and rainwater pump stations. After construction, the capabilities of the city will be further enhanced. The project overcame many difficulties in the war-torn country with the joint efforts of both the Chinese and the local teams. The company chose to stay when the nearest battlefield was even less than 100 kilometers away. And the company raised around $10 million to advance the project when the funding from the government of Iraq had a problem. So the project witnesses not only economic, social, and environmental benefits, but also friendship of the city of Hilar and the Chinese company contracted. It's really a pity that I'm not able to share the screen here. Oh, yeah, I see it. I see it's here right now. Yes.
You can see a share screen at the bottom.
So it should be on.
Yes.
Yes. So I do see. So this is a prompt. And this is the overview of the whole project. And these, the local communities and their meetings and all the gatherings with the Chinese company. The second story I'm going to share is about the reliable and affordable medicines made in Mali. Mali is in West Africa, and its industries are weak, and the pharmaceutical manufacturing was almost zero. And expensive import medicines were dominant in the market, and the supplies were not well guaranteed. And in the year 2015, in response to the call of the China-Africa Cooperation Action Plan to improve African countries' access to basic medicines, a Chinese pharmaceutical company built the first ever pharmaceutical factory of Mali in its capital, Bamako. And the factory covers an area of around 20,000 square meters and has the highest standards in West Africa. The 3 production lines now produce 15 million bottles of oral liquid formulations, 20 million bottles of large volume injections, and 400 million tablets and capsules annually. So all these are basic medicines that local dealers have been very much reluctant to import due to low profit margin. As a result, prices of these medicines in the country went down by 30%. And the factory has also more than 200 local employees that have gone through very strict training to be the first generation pharmaceutical workers in the country. And the factory sourced locally packaging materials like cartons, labels, syrup bottles, which attracted foreign investment in the sector and promoted extension of the industry trade. And also established an anti-malaria center with the Ministry of Health of Mali to provide free treatment and the nutritional food for the local patients. So for this Western African country and the 20 million people there, I think the project opened up a new page in the sustainable development and the pursuit of the people for a better life. So this is the second one. I think you can see the pictures of local staff in the factory and the facilities of production. And I'm going to this third one, a very specific case. This is in Romania. And you can see the joy of cycling. Actually, it is a Chinese invested enterprise, but it's very much local because actually the people, the investors are from China, but actually they do not have really business back in China. They developed in Romania. This is a brand called the DHS. It is a household brand of bicycles in Romania. It was founded actually in 1998 by several young entrepreneurs from the Muslim Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region in northwest China. And the production began in 1999. The company later gained its fame not only from its quality products and the sales mode, but also from promotion of green traffic and making cycling part of the life of the local community. DHS promoted the building of bicycle lanes and bike sharing projects in Romania cities to alleviate traffic congestion, pollution. It supported local sports events and in 2010 launched its own DHS Cup Racing, which is an annual nationwide cycling competition for Romanian elementary and secondary school students. And it was to promote healthy lifestyle and to raise the awareness of traffic rules among the youngsters for safe riding. Nowadays, more than 20,000 racers from 30 provinces across the country have signed up for this event. So after 20 years of localization and innovation, the company is now the largest bicycle manufacturer in Romania, a major taxpayer, and employs a local staff of more than 600. And the company also joined hands with its German partner and sells well in other European countries, including Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, France, and others. So the three stories I am presenting today, and this is the cycling competition in Romania, sponsored by this company. The stories I share today are very small, but they are real. And these are what are really happening daily along the Belt and Road countries and regions, in addition to those large projects which always pop up in the headlines of the newspapers and the media. As President Xi said, the initiative, it is trade, it is investment, and also the facilities connectivity. It is about financially joining hands and being integrated. It is also about policy coordination and dialogue. And it is people-to-people's communication and bond. President Xi sent a congratulatory letter to the Belt and Road, the Great Wall International Folk Culture and Arts Festival, which just opened Wednesday in the Langfang city in Hebei province of China. So what I want to say is that the Belt and Road Cooperation, it features mutual respect and trust and kind of benefits and the win-win cooperation and mutual learning between the peoples and civilizations. Okay. So from the Chinese perspective, we very much look forward to joining hands with more parties interested, including from the United States, to further this course to pursue our common goal of peace, development, cooperation, and also prosperity. So these are the things that I want to share today, and basically is to supplement what Consul General Zhao Jian is going to present, because I think he will give a more broad overview of this important initiative. I thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much, Commercial Officer. Very, very interesting briefing and introduction, especially the examples were very powerful. Thank you for that. I would like to request you to be here while I introduce the Consul General, the Honorable Consul General of China, based in Chicago. It's my pleasure, sir, to introduce you to this audience, to this conference, the Silk Road Conference. We've had a long partnership between the Consul General's office in Chicago and the Silk Road Conference, and also my university, Northern Illinois University. We've had this relationship for more than a decade. So, Consul General, it's with great respect that I invite you to take the podium and share your thoughts and views. Please, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Dear Professor Lipinski, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good morning. I'm truly delighted to join you at the 15th Annual Silk Road Conference via video link. I would like to thank the Central Asian Productivity Research Center for the thoughtful arrangements for this conference. My special thanks go to Professor Lipinski for all he has done to make this event possible. Speaking of the Silk Road, the theme of this conference, I would like to first recall the ancient Silk Road, a network of trade routes originating from China, connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. As ancient Chinese poems had described, numerous emissaries and traders took to the road and ships set sail, bringing about a boom in travel and trade over land and across the seas, and providing a strong impetus to regional development and exchanges and cooperation among different nations and civilizations along the routes. The world today is undergoing great development and profound transformation and changes, which calls for new growth drivers for the global economy, more inclusive and balanced development, and ways and means to bridge the yawning gap between the rich and the poor. In line with the prevailing trend of economic globalization and in response to the call of the times for reforming the global governance system and the strong aspiration of the world's people for a better life, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the building of the Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road in the year of 2013, also known as the Belt and the Road Initiative. This is an initiative for open and inclusive economic cooperation that follows the principle of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. It is based on and centered around economic cooperation, underpinned by people-to-people exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations, and aims to increase connectivity among countries along the routes through deepened practical and win-win cooperation to achieve common development. At the center of the Belt and Road cooperation are 5 connectivities. First, that's the policy connectivity. Any cooperation project under the BRI will be carried out on the basis of consultation on an equal footing, with no political strings attached. It will not be imposed from a position of strength. Rather, China seeks to align the initiative with other countries' development strategies and regional and international development agendas, so that the parties involved can draw upon each other's strengths to achieve complementarity. In fact, the BRI has been effectively aligned with policy initiatives like the Middle Corridor Initiative of Turkey, the Bright Road Initiative of Kazakhstan, the Eurasian Economic Union of Russia, and the Development Road Initiative of Mongolia, to produce greater synergy and a multiplying effect. Second, that's about infrastructure connectivity. China is working with relevant countries to accelerate implementation of major infrastructure projects such as railways, roads, and ports, with many more connectivity projects in the pipeline. It is our goal to create better conditions and more opportunities for trade and investment cooperation and economic development of all countries. Third, that's about trade connectivity. China is working with other BRI participating countries to promote trade and investment facilitation, improve business environment, and build FTAs in firm support of the multilateral trade regime and the building of an open world economy. Fourth, financial connectivity. China has engaged in diverse forms of financial cooperation with BRI partner countries and organizations, and is willing and ready to provide them with financial support for economic development to the best of its ability. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the Silk Road Fund, for instance, have already made good contributions to economic growth in relevant countries. Fifth, that's about people-to-people connectivity. Guided by the Silk Road spirit, China and other BRI participating countries have carried out extensive cooperation in science, education, culture, health, and people-to-people exchanges with firm commitment to enhancing exchanges, dialogue, and mutual learning among different nations and different civilizations. Having received positive response and very broad support from the international community, the BRI is being translated from a blueprint into reality and has grown to be the broadest and the largest platform for international cooperation in the world, generating huge opportunities and dividends to countries around the world. The cumulative trade between China and those BRI partners has exceeded $9.2 trillion, and Chinese businesses' direct investment in countries along the routes exceeded $130 billion. A World Bank report estimated that when fully implemented, the BRI could help nearly 40 million people in relevant countries to get out of poverty in the next 10 years. Despite the sudden outbreak of COVID-19 that has ravaged the world since last year, the Belt and Road cooperation has not come to a halt. Instead, it has pressed ahead against the headwind, demonstrating strong resilience and vitality. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, China and BRI partners have worked together to put up an international firewall of cooperation against the virus. China has held over 100 meetings with relevant countries to share experience in pandemic response, provided more than 280 billion masks, 3.4 billion protective suits, and 4 billion testing kits to the world, and helped many countries build testing labs. China has also conducted extensive vaccine cooperation with many countries and had by mid-June donated and exported more than 400 million doses of finished and bulk vaccines to more than 90 countries, most of which are BRI partners. In spite of the challenges posed by the pandemic, trade and investment cooperation under the BRI has made remarkable achievements, making the Belt and Road a promising model of recovery for restoring economic and social activity and a model of growth for unlocking development potential. We have seen the China-Europe freight trains playing a more prominent role as an artery for trade, the construction of the new international land-sea trade corridor picking up speed, and the cross-border e-commerce boosting the circulation of supplies of anti-pandemic materials and daily necessities. Platforms like China International Import-Export, CIIE, and China Import-Export Fair, Canton Fair, are also playing an increasingly important role in facilitating trade connectivity and technological cooperation among countries. In 2020, Chinese investors made non-financial direct investment of $18.61 billion in 58 Belt and Road countries, despite a 35% year-on-year decline in global outward direct investment, and their accumulated investment overseas economic and trade cooperation zones reached $45 billion, creating 373,000 local jobs. Going forward, China will continue to work with all other parties to pursue high-quality Belt and Road cooperation in line with the principle of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, and the philosophy of open, green, and clean development to make it high standard, sustainable, and beneficial to the people. The Belt and Road is a road to prosperity. China and other participating countries will continue to promote all-round infrastructure connectivity and enhance the free flow of goods, capital, technology, and personnel to deliver more tangible benefits to the people and enable more developing countries to participate in and gain from the Belt and Road cooperation. The Belt and Road is a road for green development. We advocate a green, low-carbon, circular, and sustainable way of life and work, and call for increased cooperation in green infrastructure, green energy, and green finance, and deepen implementation of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, so as to bring about harmonious coexistence between man and nature and sustainable development of human society. The Belt and Road is a road for health. We will continue to work with our BRI partners to help and support underdeveloped countries and regions in fighting and preventing epidemics, promote exchanges and cooperation in public health, R&D, scale up cooperation in virus origin tracing and vaccine R&D and production, and further improve global public health governance so as to build a robust global community of health for all. The Belt and Road is a road for open, inclusive, and win-win cooperation. Some people say the BRI is a geostrategic tool of China. This is a biased misunderstanding of what we are doing. In building the Belt and Road, China acts in the spirit of multilateralism, pursuing cooperation through consultation and striving to bring into full play the strengths and potential of all parties involved to foster greater synergy. The BRI, though proposed by China, belongs actually to the whole world. It is open to all countries, and its achievements will be shared by all. China welcomes and supports the U.S. participation in the Belt and Road cooperation. Our two countries are highly complementary in economic structures and comparative strengths. If our two countries can cooperate on the Belt and Road, it will serve not only the interests of our two countries, but also the interests of all participating countries in the initiative. The BRI would provide broad opportunities for U.S. businesses, open up a new horizon for China-U.S. cooperation, and place us in a better position to help partner countries strengthen infrastructure, building, advance industrialization process, and improve people's living standards. Ladies and gentlemen, China has embarked on a new journey to build a modern socialist country in all respects. We are actively building a new paradigm of development, with domestic cycle being the mainstay and the domestic and international cycles are reinforcing each other. This will provide stronger impetus and greater space for the Belt and Road cooperation. China will continue to work with relevant countries to promote high-quality Belt and Road cooperation and help them meet their needs in pandemic response and economic recovery, so as to jointly build a community with a shared future for mankind and create an even brighter future for all of us. Thank you.
Consul General, it's been a pleasure to hear you speak in such a detailed and friendly way and outgoing and informational. My only regret is that we do not have more time to get into the discussions of the details. The Silk Road has gone through so many evolutions over the past more than 1,000 years. However, we, as a society, as a global society, we are at a crossroads where it's critical that the United States and China, two important pieces in the future of the Silk Road, continue to dialogue openly and have a sense of cooperation and partnership in making the new Silk Road be the leading concept in the global economy, which I'm sure will happen. So once again, thank you very, very much for your very interesting and lucid speech on behalf of the Central Asian Pacific Research Center. I'm the vice chairman of this. My name is Paul Prabhakar. I'm also a professor at the Northern Illinois University. We have personal and professional friendships with your consulate for more than 15 years now. And I hope to have you visit the campus and also visit with our Central Asian Pacific Research Center and address us individually whenever your time allows. It now gives me great pleasure to hand off the microphone to Mr. Harry Lipinski, a great friend and colleague of mine. He's the chairperson for the Central Asian Pacific Research Center. And Harry, if you will come on stage and thank the Consul General, we can move on from there. And thank you, Consul General, for everything.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So Harry, if you can hold that for a minute, I believe there are some questions for the Consul General. And Consul General, if you have a couple more minutes, I will read some of the questions. The first one says, is China in a position to pressure the U.S. Federal Reserve to free up the $9 billion that belongs to the Afghani people? You can feel free to address it or not. It's up to you, Consul General.
This is not a question I'm very familiar about. I mean, this is not an area that I'm quite familiar about. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question, what are the steps to integrate Afghanistan into the BRI? And this individual says that is the missing link between the China-Pakistan economic corridor.
I think for today's world, the great majority of the people in the world, the great majority of the people, the great majority of the countries in the world really look forward to having a prosperous life, improved living standards for the people. So we think that peace and development are still the core of the time. That's what China has been doing in the past decades. And we all know that this year marks the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. And in a few days, we will celebrate the 72nd anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic. What we have been doing in the past decades, what the Communist Party of China has been doing in the past 100 years is to strive for the prosperity of the country, is to strive for a better life for the people. And what we have been advocating with the Belt and Road Initiative is to share more opportunities, because we all know there's really great potential for the development for the world. And also for the developing countries, there's really very great potential there. Afghanistan is a very important member in Central Asia, and also a very important member of the international community. And we know that in the past, the Afghanistan people, they have been suffering quite a lot. They have been sacrificing quite a lot. And what the people really want is the building of the economy and improvement of people's livelihood. And also we believe that it's the people who really know best the national conditions, and it's the people who really have a final say about what their country needs to do. And we always believe that, for the building of the Belt and Road, it's a extensive consultation, it's a joint contribution, and it's a shared benefits. So it's in that spirit, we have been talking with all our partners along the routes, and we really hope that in the coming days, in the future, all the relevant parties, all the neighbors, and all the members of the international community could work together with Afghanistan people to better serve the people there, and to better map out the road of development for the people there. And in that regard, China will continue to play a quite constructive role.
Thank you, Consul General. Again, a very, very open, friendly response. Appreciate that. Any way that we as a university or as a research organization can help you and the other countries by providing a neutral platform like this, we stand here ready to make that available. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend, Harry Lipinski, to thank you and wish you well, Consul General. Harry, you're on stage.
Professor, thank you very much. And Consul General and the Commercial Council, thank you for your valuable time and your comments. I think that you'll enjoy watching the next video coming from Izmir, Turkey. Interesting background. I met this gentleman when he was the Deputy Consul General for Turkey in Chicago in the fall of 1997. We became friends, and he was leaving here for Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, which is part of Azerbaijan, as a consul general. And he asked me if I would come over and help in that area, eastern Turkey and Azerbaijan, with poverty programs, economic development, and academic development to help the people, again, increase productivity. And I wasn't interested at the time. And he asked me again, I accepted the invitation. And he provided the funding through various sources in Turkey and Azerbaijan, and then added some more funding for 3 more professors. I was teaching at Purdue at the time, so I recruited 3 of what I thought were valuable professors of small business entrepreneurship, development, economic development, marketing, finance. So the 4 of us spent several weeks traveling around Turkey, working from chambers of commerce, economic development offices, and universities, and then on over to Azerbaijan. Well, the situation is when we leave, what happens? There's no supervision, there's no management. I've seen these programs fall apart many times, so have you. So I suggest that we organize some type of program where we continue with supervision. So we established at that time, another name, which evolved shortly after as the Central Asian Productivity Research Center. In the meantime, this gentleman went on to become an ambassador for Turkey and several countries, and they took a leave of absence from the ministry and joined the Organization of Islamic Cooperation as chairman for their Science and Technology Committee, and then returned to the ministry, and then back when he retired, he became the permanent ambassador for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Kabul. So he's going to report on his comments, his observations in the last couple of weeks. I think they'll be very interesting. Former Ambassador Aydin Nurhan.
Hello, dear friends. I'm grateful to Mr. Wager for this cooperation in recording this speech. And of course, my good old friend, Harry Lipinski, he asked me to speak to you. Our topic is Afghanistan. And I stayed there for 4 years, from 2013 to 2017. So based on that experience and following up a little bit more, I will put you forward some ideas and proposals to you. Okay, let's start. The first one. First and foremost is human life. For all of us, that's the first priority for the world, for us humans. So for order, for our human lives, we need law and order. We don't have law yet, but we need order at least. And to keep order, we need a sovereign power with weapons, with arms. Who is there with that? Taliban. Do we have any other candidate for that role? No, there is none. It wouldn't be realistic. So then, General Mark Milley says that we would cooperate with Taliban against ISIS. Why? Because again, there is no other candidate for Afghanistan for the time being. That's number one. The second point I'd like to make is the humanitarian crisis. IMF and the World Bank stopped transactions with Afghanistan. The United States blocked tiny $10 billion of Afghanistan. The Afghan banks cannot even dispense Afghan money. People are left without money in their pockets. And the whole world stopped asking Taliban to act as they want, especially the Western countries. So drought and famine is at the door. Starvations may come soon. This is serious. So in Turkey, we have a saying, if you fall into the ocean, you would ask the help of the snake, even the snake. So a desperate Taliban shall knock any door, above all China, of course, to get help. So what we should do is clear. We should help them. Third point I'd like to make is the vacuum. Nature does not accept vacuum. The vacuum left over from the United States shall attract other powers in the region. That means instability for Afghanistan. Panjshir Valley, where the Tajiks are, is a test case. Tajikistan may try to help the Tajiks against Taliban. We Turks know from terror no terrorist organization can survive without the help of a state behind it. So if Tajiks or other countries start helping Panjshir Valley, then it would encourage the Uzbeks and other ethnic groups in Afghanistan against a Taliban. That means chaos for the country. Proposition, any proposals? What I can think of, and I have proposed it in many other forums, is the Switzerland style. Think about the history of Switzerland. Mountainous region, just like Afghanistan. A confederation of so many different groups and languages, like Afghanistan. So perhaps what we can say is the United Nations Security Council mandate Switzerland, ask Switzerland, let's say, to send its experts to Afghanistan to study if a Swiss-style federation, confederation can be worked out. Otherwise, a strong central Afghanistan giving a straitjacket to the peoples can decompose the country or lead it into chaos and ethnic warfare. To decentralized Afghanistan, again, would be prone to decomposition. But a Switzerland style may help you, may be a solution. Another thing, of course, for that to work is Swiss style neutrality. That no country, especially the world powers, US, Russia, China, India is so keen on going into the business, let's say, on Afghanistan. So a neutrality guaranteed by the United Nations Security Council would be bringing peace, not to Afghanistan, the whole region, and to the world. So that's one proposal for me, humbly. Another thing is Loya Jirga, representing the elderly of the tribes. It's something like a parliament. It's a big parliament. So I wonder if the Loya Jirga would be efficiently used for the future of Afghanistan, as it was used traditionally in history, and until very recently, when I was there, it was convened too. So that's another proposal. Another proposal, perhaps many people would be against it, but a symbolic king for Afghanistan, representing national unity, but not mingling into the daily business of democratic governance. A king may come in at crucial times with the support of the Loya Jirga. They make a package together, Loya Jirga and a symbolic king. That might be another proposal from my side. So give Taliban time, my seventh idea. Give Taliban time. Think of, if you're my age, you would remember the bloody days of Iranian Revolution. If you go to Tehran today, you'll see ladies without head cover anymore. It's a reality. It's a fact. Their head covers all the way back to here. It's open. The hair is, you can see the hair of ladies. What happened since 1980, 40 years? What will happen to Afghanistan in 40 years? So give Taliban time. That's important. And 8th point, my last point, Taliban should keep up to its promise of the general amnesty women's rights, not touching the lifestyles of the people, and realize that Afghan youths born into the war is much different than the youth of Afghanistan 20 years, 30 years ago. It's a different country now. And Taliban has to be aware of it, realizing that. Lastly, I would say for Turkey, for my country, Turkey is a rising power, as many know. We surpassed $200 billion in exports, targeting $500 billion. And a good asset is the defense industry is booming nowadays. And we are forcing the limits of $1 trillion GDP. And we have legitimacy and cultural affinity with the Afghan people. So we can do much for Afghanistan. NATO knows it, the United States knows it, and we will be working together. Immigration is a strategic threat to Turkey. If we, all of us, don't help Afghanistan, the Afghan people, first target is Turkey for them. Already, official number from the words of Turkish president, 300,000 Afghans are already in Turkey. Unofficial numbers go all the way up to 500,000. If we don't help Afghanistan, it will swell. So what we can do is, as a NATO member, Turkey indeed would like to work with NATO and the EU rather than pushing Taliban to the mercy of other players eager for the region. I thank you again, and I thank Harry and Christopher again for their help, and best wishes to you all, dear friends. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Aydin. And I think this was some very good concepts to think about. He's a tremendous mind. He has so much to offer. And so he's been around the world. He's been to several continents officially for the Turkish government and also for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. I don't know if many people know, but the OIC is the second largest world organization in the world, which serves the 52 Islamic nations in the world. It's the second largest behind the United Nations. So, and I served as both chairman of the Science and Technology Committee and also in Kabul as the permanent ambassador, and then returned to Turkey and went into semi-retirement and then worked for a think tank in Turkey, and then a formal retirement. And I think he lives in Izmir now. But I've always enjoyed chatting with him. He's a great mind, a lot of wisdom. Now we have the pleasure of introducing David Headley, who is unable to attend personally. He had a problem with internet. So I'm serving as David Headley to introduce two videos that focus on agriculture. Dave is chairman for the Central Asian Productivity Research Center's Agriculture Committee, and he's also an executive with the Illinois Soybean Association. but he's had a tremendous experience working with the foreign countries, and we depend on him for up-to-date information from the Central Asian nations for our quarterly reports. So at this time, we're going to introduce 2 videos back-to-back, very short, but talk about our farm tour. So if you can proceed with the video.
What drives our growth? It's the resources we nurture as stewards of the land in a shared world. It's technology. Without sophisticated innovation, constant improvement, every season will be like the one before. A better tomorrow depends on bold ideas. Real progress demands a focus on the future. It is commerce and trade. Containers that travel by road and rail and water to carry our products far and wide. Trade needs partners. So it's the people all over the world who buy our soybeans. Their demand drives us to create and innovate and produce high-quality food for people, feed for animals, sustainable fuel for a busy world. So what drives our growth? It's all of these things and all of us together. Connected by innovative thought, united by ideas, propelled by a vision, honest, open, uncompromised. We are ready to grow, ready to lead, for life, for the future, for the world.
The in-demand soybean. From soil to consumer, the journey of this crop spans continents. As a global leader in soybean production, Illinois delivers. Here, Soy from Illinois embarks on its travels from farms in Illinois to markets all over the U.S. and around the world.
The Illinois farmers are wanting to, they want to make the soil better for the next generation and the next generation. And I think by the practices that's out there today, the sustainabilities, we're able to do that. Soil testing, scouting, fertility, nutrient management. It's just a multitude all the way through, from the time we open the bag of seed until the harvester goes through and harvests that crop.
Typically, as a farmer, I select for yield, but with the end user in mind, I'm starting to think more about protein and oil. I think buyers are very interested in compositional quality of soybeans, protein and oil being the big two, as well as the amino acid profiles, especially as it gets mixed into animal feeds.
The Illinois Soybean Association helps increase soybean value for everyone, from seed to feed, by supporting a U.S. industry program called HiQ, short for High Yield Plus Quality.
I think HiQ really brings an awareness to farmers that we need to improve the soybeans that we are selling. Farmers think about yield, but our customers think about the importance of protein and oil. And I think that HiQ is a great program that brings together both of our needs, and hopefully will build a strong business relationship.
Here in Illinois, half of our soybeans are exported. And being able to get those soybeans delivered, whether they're locally or halfway around the world, is really important to us as producers and our end users. We're fortunate here in Illinois to have a lot of great ways to transport those beans, whether it's on the Mississippi River, utilizing our rail, or our highway interstate system. Soy from Illinois helps make sure that those things are running smooth, and we're able to get that done, to get our soybeans to our customers in a very efficient and reliable manner.
With proper transportation locally, soy from Illinois is able to thrive globally.
I had the opportunity with another board member and some staff to go to Taiwan. The main purpose of that trip was so that we could go and talk to some companies that are currently purchasing our soybeans and what they're looking for and what we can do to ensure that they're going to continue to think of Illinois soybeans. And it was a pretty humbling experience. I'm growing soybeans here. Beans from my farm could potentially have went through the whole transportation cycle from where they went from our farm here to the elevator, to the river, and then down the river onto a Panamax vessel or another different cargo ship and ended up in Taiwan, and now they're being used for general food consumption or other uses for soybeans in Taiwan.
No matter where customers are located, a neighboring state or the other side of the world, when Illinois soybeans are in demand, ISA helps see to it that farmers deliver.
Okay, thank you very much. Just as a footnote, Illinois is the state that exports the largest amount of soybeans from the United States. It's the largest exporter of soybeans of all the 50 states. Due to the ongoing COVID pandemic and travel restrictions, the Illinois Soybean Association has produced a virtual farm tour with one of his directors near Chicago. In this video, you hear from Jeff O'Connor about his farming operations, see soybean crops in the field, learn about his sustainability methods, equipment used, and other common questions about farmers in agro in Illinois. If you go to our website or contact us through email, I can send you the link and you can click that for the virtual tour. And you can do that anytime at your leisure. But going back to the Belt and Road, our organization produced, I think, one of the earliest PowerPoint presentations that I know of about the Belt and Road Initiative, as it was introduced by the Chinese Premier in 2013. By 2014, we were beginning to produce the first PowerPoint. And what happened, it was moving so fast, we couldn't keep up. We had to keep changing the presentation. It reached to complete it. We finally said we're going to have to skip a certain amount. So at this time, it's time for the new Consul General from Pakistan, Tariq Karim. Thank you.
Thank you very much for introducing me. CAPRC Chairman, Professor Harry Lipinski, CAPRC 2021 Conference Chair, Arid Cole, my Consul General colleagues, and other dignitaries. Let me at the outset appreciate the Central Asian Productivity Research Institute for organizing this wonderful Zoom meeting and conference. I'm also grateful for providing me an opportunity to participate in it. I have been assigned the topic, and that is to speak on the business opportunities in Pakistan. And I think that is very important, and I would like to share with you some ideas and some facts in this regard. Pakistan, as you know, is an emerging economy, and in the last few years, it has emerged as an important market for businesses. I would begin by explaining what makes Pakistan an attractive business market. First, Pakistan, as you know, is the fifth most populous country in the world. With a market of over 220 million people, 55% of the population is below the age of 19. with a strong middle class and a part of the workforce, and a large part of the workforce proficient in English. The country possesses a large pool of professionals, trained and experienced engineers, bankers, lawyers, and other professionals, with many having substantial international experience. The consumer market in Pakistan has been booming for the last many years. And our 9 million vibrant diaspora in different parts of the world, including the strong diaspora in the United States, is another factor of strength. Second, Pakistan's geostrategic location. As you know, the country is located at the confluence of South Asia, West Asia, and Central Asia, and offers a unique opportunity to become Asia's premier trade, energy, and transport corridor, and to serve as a regional transit hub. Pakistan provides the landlocked Central Asian states the shortest route through Afghanistan to the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, reviving some of the ancient Silk routes. Its sea route remains open throughout the year due to moderate temperatures. This strategic advantage alone makes Pakistan marketplace teeming with possibilities. Pakistan is also located in a region where there is a fast economic growth. The development of the Gwadar seaport further attracts businesses and the trade ships from around the world. The coastal belt will have access to Middle East markets, and the ongoing development of the coastal roads is another high mark for this. Implementations of the projects like TAPI, the gas projects from Turkmenistan, and CASA 1000, that is a electricity transport project from Tajikistan, will further promote regional integrations besides ensuring global energy supply chains. However, it would need a stable and peaceful Afghanistan to realize this vision. As a neighbor, sharing 2,600 kilometers along border and hosting over 3 million Afghan refugees, Pakistan has a vital interest in lasting peace and stability in Afghanistan. The conflict in Afghanistan has led to over 80,000 casualties and over $150 billion in economic loss. Community to show solidarity with the people of Afghanistan and engage with them in the wake of the new emerging situation. It would be critical to address food and medicine shortage in the country. On its parts, besides hosting over 3 million Afghan refugees and from our meager resources, Pakistan continues to provide humanitarian support in several ways, including by facilitating the evacuation and relocation of international staff, establishment of a humanitarian corridor for the delivery of relief goods, and in-kind assistance for Afghan brethren through air and land routes. Ladies and gentlemen, third, the focus of the government is on the economy. As you know, the government focus has shifted from geopolitics to geoeconomics with greater emphasis on peaceful neighborhood, regional connectivity, and economic development. The government has embarked on the path of socio-economic development of the country. The macroeconomic stability, successful handling of the pandemic, and other reforms and policies undertaken by the government have helped in many ways and provided a unique opportunity for economic growth. Pakistan's dealing of pandemic has been internationally recognized, with Pakistan's among top countries dealing in the best possible way. Now, I would like to share about some of the success story. And as I mentioned in the terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, despite that the pandemic was all spread and we also witnessed many waves of the pandemic, but the government policy of smart lockdowns, along with the other policies like SARS cash program for vulnerable groups and billion tree plantation scheme and others really helped in a big way when the neighboring countries were struggling to combat the pandemic. So that is one of the success story. The second, I would say, the infrastructures. Since the good infrastructure is necessary for development and for progress in businesses, there has been a significant improvement in an upgradation in the infrastructure throughout the country. As you know, some of the projects have been completed, are being completed under the CPAC arrangement, but this is not the only thing. The government has been preoccupied with the infrastructures and its own projects in the public and private sector, as well as the CPAC has contributed in the upgradation of infrastructures. And now I think whether it is the road infrastructure or it's an optic fiber and others, everywhere there is an improvement. The next success story I would like to share is the story of investment. Pakistan is number one. Pakistan is one of the has most open and liberal investment policies, not only in the region, but in the world. We have opened almost all sectors with the exceptions of very few in the security or in the prohibited weapons and few other items. Just to give you example, we have so many international companies in Pakistan, from Nestle Pakistan to sub banks like Standard and Chartered banks. One example in particular in the telecommunication sector. In many countries, the telecommunication sector is considered as a strategic area which is not open to foreign investment. In Pakistan, interestingly, all 4 or 5 major international telecommunication sectors, we start, let's say, Telenor of Norway. Norway have a population of, let's say, a few millions, but it would be interesting to know that we have many millions subscriber of Telenor in Pakistan that is owned one of the big telecom company. The second, for example, Zong China, that is one of another company, telecommunication company owned by Chinese. Then we have VEON, that is Russian owned. Then is Etisalat of UAE. So it is still open for international, and we have many companies have been interested in that. Similarly, there are incentives for the new investments. And there are 2 or 3 types of the incentive, one related to the special economic zone. I would like to mention that in terms of special economic zone, we have some special economic zone under the CPAC, but they are not restricted to only 2 countries. They are open to all other countries, and they can invest. So this is contrary to the popular perceptions, and not only under the CPAC, but also other than the CPAC, they can invest, they can have their own special economic zones, and they can benefit from the incentives. Incentive includes, for example, the one-time exemptions for 10 years on, let's say, of the development of agreement, one-time custom duty exemption on import of capital goods, and 10 years exemption for the income tax. Similarly, for the export processing zone, we have duty-free import of machinery and other duty-free vehicles allowed certain conditions. So what is important is to know that all these incentives make Pakistan a a very attractive investment market. The country, for example, the energy sector, if we take, because there are certain sectors that are over priority sectors, and the government has recently taken many steps, for example, in the construction industry, auto vehicle, electric vehicles, and mobile manufacturing. And just to share with you, the Chinese mobiles, Pakistan has started to export the Chinese mobiles, and Samsung has announced to manufacture mobiles in Pakistan in recently. So there are other companies who are taking interest. In energy sectors, there are a lot of opportunities, and they can be as big as 100 billion. And this include, for example, the power transmission line, distribution lines, and also the power project themselves. The next story I would share about the IT and technology zones. There is a growing emphasis on the information technology. Since we have a IT graduates, lot of English-speaking trained workforce. So with that, there is a lot of increase in the exports recently, and it has doubled. It's still less than its potential. Now we have export of 2 billion, but there is a much more potential. But I can share with you, for example, the United States is the biggest IT market with more than 60% of the share. And we have many, for example, individuals in Pakistan, freelance, who take contract from international companies, and they deliver very cheap IT products, services throughout the world due to the cheap currency, because a lot of devaluation, and many companies around the world are benefiting out of it. There are several startups, for example, starting from, let's say, recently we had an investment of 85 billion in Airlift. That is a grocery and as a whole stores. It was recently received. Similarly, we have Cream, for example. It was recently, few months back, it was acquired by Uber. So it was done by Pakistanis, and then we have Daraz that was developed inside Pakistan. Then Alibaba took it, and there are so many others. We have also special technological zones areas that are being developed. So there is a lot of opportunities for the investor to go there to benefit. And the last story that I would like to share is the story of the tourism. You might have observed that in recent years, especially with the significant and I would say a great improvement in the security situation across Pakistan, especially in big cities, there a lot of with the opening and some of the government incentives, many international magazines and credible bloggers have identified Pakistan as one of the top tourism market. Pakistan, the government of Pakistan has also gave special emphasis, for example, on the religious tourism. There was a historic opening of Kartarpur corridors on the India-Pakistan borders. The opening that has been, for example, one of the schemes since 7 decades, but it was open just 1 year back. And so many Sikh pilgrims coming from India and around the world. Similarly, you would be knowing about the Buddhist Mahayana branch of the Buddhism that emerged in present-day Taxila Swat area of Pakistan, and from there it spread all along. And I think there is a Hindu and some other religious sites there, and government is really taking much interest in so many devotees. They come and benefiting from it. And not only this religious tourism, we have an historical and let's say the ancient site like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and Mehergarh civilization, so thousands of years of civilization. So there is a lot of interest of tourists who are interested in history. Similarly, similarly, the mountaineering, we have K2 and natural beauty. I mean, the diversity of climate. So similarly, this is the one of the top priority of the government, and government is also giving many incentives and really encouraging investors to invest in tourism and the hospitality sectors. So since the pandemic has hit this sector worldwide, but I think there is an opening and people would like to go, we will encourage people to really benefit from opportunities in Pakistan. And I would like, at the end, I would like to say that United States is particularly has been a very important development part for Pakistan throughout the history. And it is still the largest export market for Pakistan and a very important source of foreign direct investments. The two countries have a big scope for further expanding their business ties. The presence of vibrant Pakistani diaspora in the U.S. further provides for the cooperation, especially the diaspora has some of the very successful entrepreneurs and professionals who can really play an important role as a bridge and to further promote the business ties. I would therefore encourage the U.S. investors and other investors from the other parts of the world to take benefit from the opportunities in Pakistan, and really this really can go a long way. At the end, I would like to thank you again for giving me opportunity. This is really an important forum for us, and we will really engage with you to really realize our common goals and objectives. Thank you very much, Professor Harry Lipinski, for giving the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your information. Paul, do you want to monitor any questions?
Sure. Consul General, thank you. As the Vice Chairman for Central Asian Pacific Research Center, my name is Paul Prabhakar. I'm also with the Northern Illinois University. Have had a long relationship with your Chicago Consul General Office. So welcome you to Chicago and to this position. We look forward to building that friendship. If there are any questions for the Consul General, you can send, if you're in the audience, you can send a chat message to me. While that's happening, I would like to thank Consul General Tariq Karim for his enlightening message, sharing the benefits of partnering with Pakistan for various global issues. And I would also like to thank the consulate generals of Turkey and China, and also Natik, who is the executive director of the Azerbaijan American Chamber of Commerce, in addition to the very influential speakers who couldn't be here, but who were able to share their message. Aidan Nurhan is definitely, his message was a very powerful one on video, and so was David Headley. Since we are located in the heartlands of America, he was sharing his leadership position in the soybean market and how all of these go into the global interest of peace together. So, Harry, at this point, we do not have any follow-up questions for Consul General Tariq Karim, and I will hand the microphone back to you, Harry.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'd like to mention that Pakistan is very important to U.S. trade. A lot of Americans don't understand it, and very few understand it. But the United States Department of Commerce actually assists with marketing tools so you can help penetrate the Pakistan market. And that they work with new to market or new to export. So both categories are served with that. And Paul, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Aaron Cole for chairing this event today. I'd like to thank Anthony Preston and all the people in the background, Chris Wager, and also young Chris Wager. Chris is our director for media technology. That his son is on that committee. And we want to thank these two for presenting this program today by way of YouTube. And I want to thank all the presenters, all the council generals for their time. And the last comment is that everyone that's involved in the Central Asian Productivity Research Center are volunteers. Highly professional people donate their time and effort to create training programs, educational programs, and 90% of our small budget, we've never, believe it or not, we've never gone over $5,000. We operate on shoestrings. People say, how do you produce so much with so little? And I say, we were like monks, we beg and borrow. But it really, I'm so pleased after 22 years of success that we have such great people involved, and they do so much for the people of Central Asia and the related regions. One program, we had 67 students from 3 continents. You say, why 3 continents? Just so happens friends have friends who have friends who hear about the program. And I think we had 3 students from Africa, from 3 different countries in Africa, all across Europe. While it was directed to Central Asia, they connected. We don't say no, that we're welcome to help any students. So these are the programs that we maintain through we operate a business and training center institute. And again, all the professors come from 10, 12 different highly respected universities, and they donate their time. So if you can, we'd appreciate a donation to the Central Asian Productivity Research Center. We're classified by the Internal Revenue as a 501c3 tax-exempt educational organization. And in concluding remark, just remind you that there is a new era in Central Asia. And I mentioned this earlier at the beginning of the program. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, quote, as the bridge between Asia and Europe, Central Asia is entering a new era, better connected and integrated within the wider global economy. And I bid you good afternoon. Enjoy your weekend, and thank you for your kind attention. And again, thanks to all those participated in the production of this event and those that participated in the event. Thank you very much.